and welcome to Soup and Meatballs. I was way too busy to even consider writing an introduction for today, so why don't we just get started? Tim, how was your week?
It was a good week, and you know what? I think we're best when we fly by the seat of our pants.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not wearing pants, so
I'm in gym shorts.
I lied. I'm in sweatpants. Gym shorts?
Yeah, like workout shorts, like mesh shorts.
It's 33 on my computer right now, which
Well,
outside. I mean, inside it's warmer, but not much.
I was up nice and early. I had like actual adult pants on to go get my bagel and coffee earlier, and now I'm lounging.
In fact, I had my meatballs for breakfast this morning. What's interesting about dinner last night?
Did
we go
you
to Mario's.
actually have meatballs for breakfast though?
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
I had meatballs like 45 minutes ago. I ate. So every Friday we go to this restaurant called Mario's, and I'll order my dinner, and then I'll get meatballs on the side. And I tell them every time it's probably to go, and I might eat one or a half just to have some because these are great meatballs. So last night we go to the restaurant a little early because Jen gets out of practice early, and there was nobody in the restaurant. Like we were there, we started their rush. So I told the waiter, I said, just tell Nello in the back, just tell him to make me something. Because you go to a restaurant like this, those cooks always have something that they don't have on the menu, right?
Right.
So, oh my gosh, it wasn't Nello, it was his wife Cinzia. Cinzia made this just spectacular sausage and pepper pasta dish. I don't know where they got the peppers from, but these peppers were magical. And they were just like sweet peppers. I mean, it wasn't like, anything, but they were so good. But yeah, I had the meatballs for breakfast, and I'm ready for the day.
Since you shouted out Mario's, I'll shout out Bloomin' Bagels. If you're ever in Bloomsburg and you want a good breakfast sandwich.
I like the I don't know what the English term is. It's not alliteration. It is alliteration, Bloomin' Bagels, but like
Bloomin' Bagels.
Bloomin' from Bloomsburg. Blooming is like spring, and you're building big. I don't know.
It's also
I like that as a name.
It's an alliterative pun.
That's where we'll go with it. I like that. And they got the good bagels up there?
They've got the good bagels. Not everywhere around here has like I call it Taylor ham, but the closer you are to Philly, people will call it pork roll.
I understand what that is.
Some New Jersey caviar, whatever you call it, and so that's always good on a bagel or a croissant.
Oh, I'm
not French. I'm not.
I'm a straight cream cheese guy.
Love cream cheese. Sometimes I get creative with it. Though. Sometimes they do the lox spread, which is also very good.
What's that?
It's like salted fish.
Okay. Pardon my lack of
your limited cultural food palate.
Yeah, the most sandwichy I get with bagels is like schmegels at Sheets, but that's straight like bacon and fake eggs.
But the mind is not nourished on meatball alone, Max.
Well, so that I got sausage and peppers yesterday, which were absolutely tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. Well, we'll get into it today. This one's going to be a tough one for us. We hit on it a little bit last week. We're down to a couple days now before Notre Dame and Ohio State take the field for the college football national championship. 7 versus 8 as far as seeds go, but as far as a Michigan fan is concerned, what kind of sitcom is CBS running on Monday night? I don't know. I don't think either one of us. I don't think either one of us want to see either team win. So aside from rooting for 97 overtimes and a potential tie, Tim, what are you looking for on Monday?
Unfortunately, I think I'm looking at an Ohio State win, but I will be, marginally rooting for Notre Dame just because it's better than rooting for the other thing.
I'm going to go the other way. I think that this game, every metric, I think that people have forced down our throats as sports fans says Ohio State should win this by 3 touchdowns. I honestly think, and this is how weird it's going to get, I think Notre Dame not only keeps it close, I'm going to take Notre Dame to win for one reason. And I don't think you'll ever guess the reason. Lou Holtz. I think Lou Holtz is in Ryan Day's head in a way similar to how Jim Harbaugh was. And I think Ryan Day can find himself stubbornly trying to show Notre Dame how tough he is. Now, Notre Dame's front four is nothing like Michigan's front four, but Notre Dame's defense is not exactly pushovers. They've got a decent enough secondary where, I mean, Jeremiah Smith had 1 catch last week against Texas. He's a really, really good player. He's probably the best receiver in college, but he's mortal, it's been shown. If Notre Dame's defensive secondary can put together a package that, confuses Will Howard. Will Howard's due for another bad game. He hasn't had one in the playoffs.
We've seen he's clearly not, he's fallible. He had, the mistake at the end of Oregon. He did not play well against Michigan.
I think it boils down to if Jeremiah Love can keep the ball moving and keep the ball away from the Ohio State offense, I think Notre Dame has a real shot. I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to say Notre Dame wins a 24-21 game, and Marcus Freeman heads to the NFL then.
So, and this might be partially my downfall, but I'm maybe overly logical with things. I feel like if there are 10 ways that this game plays out, there's one version that Notre Dame wins, where Ohio State has some bad turnovers, where Ohio State maybe does get suckered into trying to win it on the ground. But it's such a narrow path to victory for Notre Dame, whereas there are 8 or 9 different ways that Ohio State could win this.
Have you seen Men in Black 3?
Is that the one with Josh Brolin?
I don't know who Josh Brolin is. I feel bad.
He's the young Tommy Lee Jones?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the one.
Okay.
So they go back in time, and there's the alien guy who's got the weird thing in his head.
Yeah.
But he sees all kinds of different futures. That's what you sound. Oh, I can't think of the guy's name. He's like, oh, this is my favorite moment in human history, and they were.
As a Marvel fan, I feel like Doctor Strange, where I'm like, the Avengers can only beat Thanos one way out of 1,000,000.
This is the way to do it. Yeah.
The only way that Notre Dame wins is if Tony Stark kills himself. Spoiler alert for a 5-year-old movie.
I think that one way is possible. And maybe if they played sometimes, maybe Notre Dame wins twice. But I happen to think that one time is going to be Monday. I don't know. Just it's a hunch.
So Notre Dame didn't luck their way into this spot. Notre Dame can absolutely win. I'm just saying it is by far the least likely outcome. But that outcome exists. Somewhere in the Garden of Forking Paths, there is a trail in the multiverse where Notre Dame is holding the trophy.
And we're going to talk about this later. I think either way, life will go on. It's like the first 2 weeks will be irritating. You remember back when Sports Illustrated used to put out the VHS tape of whatever championship run it was, and if you order your subscription now, you'll get this for free.
And the football phone.
Yeah, you're gonna see like the first 2 weeks of like merchandise that hits the stores and headlines. But once March Madness comes around, I mean, we will. I will have forgotten whoever wins the game on Monday. I will have forgotten their path. I will forget that Ohio had to beat Tennessee and then Texas and all that stuff. And I'll just rely on the fact that Michigan pulled out a win against Ohio State this year, and we might get another year of Ryan Day because of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, if there are 2 things that help make this medicine not be quite so bitter, the idea of an Ohio State national title, it is that Michigan embarrassed them at home. I mean, it was a close game, but just the fact that the talent disparity was so great. For Michigan to go into Columbus and be like, yeah, we just put our feet up on your couch. What are you going to do about it? is very satisfying. And also the fact that Michigan won last year. Like if Michigan was still waiting for that last title from 1997 or God forbid 48, this would be unbearable. But the fact that Michigan would be like, well, we did this last year, so enjoy it. It's a spoonful of sugar.
What's going to be interesting for either one of these teams is they can say they've had to win 3 games to get here. So that the extra games, the extra playoff rounds, I don't know if it makes it better. It makes it different. Michigan didn't have to go through Tennessee; they just had to go through Alabama.
Right. Now, will Ohio State have won 15 games or 16 games if they finish this? Will they be 15-2, 14-2?
They're coming into this one. Let me get my producer on the phone.
I think they're 13-2.
This too. So, yep, they're coming. Yeah, the game is Monday. I know. Yeah, they're 13-2. 13-2 with losses to Oregon and Michigan, and Notre Dame, the one whatever loss to Northern Illinois.
Right. So this is essentially, well, not anymore because now the NFL plays 17, and if Roger Goodell gets his way, 18 games. But this is essentially like a 90s or 2000s NFL season that Ohio State has now gone through.
Yeah, and this is something we can talk about in future shows about, like they refer to this in the NBA more than anything, the wall that the rookies hit, because they're used to playing 35, 40 games, and then the NBA doubles that. Is this good for college players? Is this good for college players who are on their way to the NFL? The James Madisons, the IUPs, the Bloomsburgs of the world, those kids playing 16 games, that's a different story.
And I also think about the young guys who are jumping from high school to now, you're a freshman or a sophomore, say you're a redshirt sophomore starting for the first time, and you're going through essentially as a 19-year-old kid an NFL grind of a schedule.
Yeah, well, it's the travel. I mean, because some of these high school teams are going to play 16, 17 games with scrimmages.
Right, like in Pennsylvania, the PIAA champ typically plays 15 or 16 games depending on what league they're in or what district.
But the travel, though, I mean, I don't know about like a school like St. Francis. We'd have to look this up. But like where we went to school, where I teach, like they're not the furthest we travel is 2 hours, which up the road it's a ways, but you're not getting on a plane, you're not doing all of that stuff, which is incredibly a pain in the butt.
There's a big difference between a 90-minute bus ride to Tunkhannock and then
5-hour plane ride to USC or Oregon.
Right, yeah, going out to Pasadena and then going down to Miami and going to Columbus in between, or going to South Bend.
And you're experiencing different weather patterns and things like that. Yeah,
time zones.
So Monday, what's your score on Monday?
I think it's going to be fairly ugly. I'm going to say 31-14. Ohio State.
That's a 17-point win. Go with that. Like I said, I have 24-21. We will see one way or the other.
Wait, since we have different champions, should we have a Soup and Meatballs bet?
Oh, sure. What do you want to bet?
If I win the bet, I get to be the Bears' next coach.
I mean, it can't be worse than Eberflus.
Can I at least get an interview?
Yeah. I'll tell you what. If Ohio wins one of our segments, I will interview you for the Bears head coaching job.
So I'll tell you what. I'll think of a real.
I don't have that much confidence in Notre Dame. Like I said, it's a hunch. So, think of something that I'll be willing to do. But
okay,
it's
if I don't think of it, I'll even text you before Monday. Before game time, we'll make sure it's all nice and legal.
Sounds like a plan.
We'll run it by the legal department here at Soup and Meatballs.
We have one of those?
Oh yeah, we have a whole cadre of attorneys on retainer.
Ryan Ellis is a lawyer in New Jersey. We'll give him a call. All right.
Yeah, and I've watched several episodes of Matlock, often with the sound on.
Pretty much makes you a legal scholar.
I could pass the bar.
Nice. All right. So from college playoffs to pro playoffs, where we'll start in the NFC just for you, Tim. Your Eagles did the Bears a favor last week by knocking out the Packers. So on behalf of Bears Nation, thank you for that. This week, your reward, a home game with the Los Angeles Rams tomorrow, who I think surprised some people with what they did against Minnesota. So
not us. No, we both had the Rams winning, didn't we?
Maybe in our confidence picks, but I think I would have picked Minnesota. We have to go back in time and look.
I know I totally biffed it in the AFC because I had the Steelers being competitive with the Ravens, which they were not. But I might have had the Rams over the Vikings.
Right. Well, now you got them now, and I think storylines aside from the situation in California that LA is dealing with, the weather in Pennsylvania tomorrow is scheduled to be not good, and the Rams outside this year not good.
Yeah, Stafford notoriously does not play well in inclement weather. And they're expecting about 5 inches of snow to start right before kickoff and then all through the game.
Which is that's going to be our good playoff game because tonight's playoff game is inside.
Right.
But we'll get to that. As far as this one, the weather, I think you're going to see a steady dose of a guy you didn't see in the Eagles' last game of the season. I think Barkley touches the ball 30, 35 times, and I don't particularly think this is going to be close. But you're an Eagles fan, Tim, so you're wired to think a little bit differently. How do you see it?
When you talk about 5 inches of snow, one team that's used to cold weather, one team that's coming from Southern California, and you're also talking about a team that's playing in the elements with maybe the best defense in the NFL, probably the best offensive line in the NFL, and the best running back in the NFL. It just seems like every factor is stacked in the Eagles' favor. And I tend to be pretty pessimistic overall, but especially when it comes to Eagles games where I'm like, this might be the week so-and-so gets them, So I think all the factors are in the Eagles' favor. But then this also takes me back to when they closed the vet with the NFC Championship in 2002, and everyone was like, oh, the Buccaneers had never won when the temperature got under 40 and the Eagles were closing the vet. They opened the game by returning the kickoff for a touchdown, and then it was just the worst loss in Eagles history as the Bucs just never let them back in the game. So I don't want to lean too much on the optimism that the factors are giving me, but I do think the Eagles can win by like 7-10.
Okay. I mean, I feel about this game as I think you feel about the Ohio State game. I just, because of the defense, because of the weather, because of the situation, because of the cross-country travel, because of the running game, I wrote down 28-6, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was worse, honestly.
The things that I'm worried about, a lot's been made about Kellen Moore and the interest, the Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, and the interest that he's drawing as a head coaching candidate. The Cowboys were scheduling an interview with him. So I think the Eagles suffered from a little lack of focus when they played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl when Jonathan Gannon was interviewing for the Arizona job. So, I think that gives me like very little worry, but enough that I have pause at least.
I got you.
And then also, they didn't play their sharpest game last week. They got that opening turnover that they turned into a touchdown. And then they were pretty listless for most of the rest of the first half. The defense, I forget who cited it on Twitter. It was a season high for missed tackles by the Eagles defense against the Packers. And yet they still won by 12.
Well, the Packers are a good team. I mean,
right.
They're a playoff team, no kidding. But, I mean, I wonder if you said like the coaching focus is off. I hadn't considered Kellen Moore's interest in other jobs, and I think to the point where like there's rules about when you can interview and when you can't. And I know the Bears talked to Ben Johnson but it was like a Zoom call, and I don't know how long it was. And if Detroit is on a bye, I don't know what the rules are. I honestly think, though, that maybe you can learn from the mistakes of the past when, like you said, that they weren't at their most focused against Kansas City, and that's going to be a byproduct of Sirianni. He's going to be the one who has to like take charge and say, "Look, I know you're talking to these people, but we have a situation here."
Ultimately, I don't think Gannon was distracted by interviewing for the Arizona job. I think there were other factors that hurt the Eagles. I think they struggled with footing on that field against the Chiefs. I don't think it was a lack of focus in coaching, but I think it can go either way when you have coaches who are interviewing for jobs during the playoffs or in the lead up to the Super Bowl. It can either be, the logistics of, okay, I have to fly to Dallas, then I have to fly back, then we have a walkthrough, then we're going, to do like this team obligation. The game can almost get lost in a list of other professional obligations. Or it can hyper focus you where the game is almost like a final interview where you're like, I'm going to put together the best 15 or 20 scripted plays that are going to show my mastery of NFL offensive football so that I get this job.
And do you overthink things then? And that's one of the questions arising in Detroit, which we're going to get to with Ben Johnson. But who do you got in this game?
I have the Eagles. I'm going to say 28-20.
So you're going by 8. So both of us having Philadelphia going ahead. Not a major shocker in this one. The aforementioned Detroit Lions, though, with, as you said, Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson taking on Washington tonight. Detroit's the top seed. They're getting a couple of their injured players back, including starting linebacker Alex Anzalone. Lions have the biggest spread of the weekend, 9.5-point favorites against Washington. I don't think that's a big surprise. I forgot about Aaron Glenn interviewing both coordinators for the Lions, hot commodities. Not a surprise because they're the top seed. Tim, is this one going to be close?
I don't think so. I know Washington.
You're trying to play it off, like be the sports writer, like, yeah, maybe we'll get people to watch.
Yeah, ultimately, I'm a slave to my honesty when it comes to who I think is going to win this one. Look, I know the country wants to see, the upstart that's in the playoffs after, struggling and having the fun rookie quarterback, but I just think Detroit's too good, especially now, like you said.
I think you have that story in Detroit too, though. I mean, the Detroit is win-starved for the playoffs. I mean, whoever wins this is like, it's a feel-good story for everybody almost.
But I mean,
I know where you're going with Washington. Though.
Right. I mean, but Detroit is coming off a season where they were in the NFC Championship and almost knocked off San Francisco on the road. So that was in San Francisco last year, right?
If you say it loud enough, it is.
That was in San Francisco. So, this almost reminds me of the flip side of, I remember when the last time Washington won a Super Bowl with Mark Rippon as their quarterback.
91, they played in Detroit.
Yeah, winter 92. And Detroit was kind of a feel-good team because they were on the rise. Barry Sanders had just been drafted in 88, and he was maybe the most fun player in the league at that time. And Washington just had too much. They had the Hogs. They had a good defense. They had Gary Clark and Art Monk and Ricky Sanders, and they just went out.
MVP year?
What's that?
That Mark Rippon, was he the MVP that year?
Yeah, that was Mark Rippon's year where he was and Super Bowl MVP as well.
The one big year, like the
yeah, that was his Carson Wentz year. So I think we're going to see the flip side of this, where Detroit just has too much. Washington's a nice story, but stories end all the time.
For a team like Washington, though, coming off the second pick of the draft, they have a rookie quarter. They're taking great progressive steps. I'm with you. I mean, I think Detroit's the prohibitive favorite in this. I think Jahmyr Gibbs runs all over Washington, and I think Goff just has a.
Montgomery's supposed to be back as well. I'd heard.
Oh, okay. So the two-headed monster. Then I mean, that's nuts. Yeah, I have Detroit 38-23. So it's a 15-point game in my head. They cover the 9.5. And I think Washington scores late to make it closer. I think Detroit runs away with this. I think it's over by halftime in a lot of people's minds. Not a great primetime game for today, I think, but tomorrow's games are phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Buffalo and Baltimore.
Not the primetime game tonight. Yeah, it's the game of the playoffs, but.
Especially with, not that it should matter, but Saturday Night Live coming back from the holidays, you would think they would want the game that's going to draw the most eyeballs to lead into late night programming, just from a media standpoint.
Look at that.
That's based on an old model because people will just watch Saturday Night Live, whenever they want. If
I have it on DVR, I watch it.
Yeah, I watch
Monday
it on Peacock.
I watch it Monday afternoon most of the time, but. Yeah, so, I mean, speaking of big lines, over to the AFC now, in a game I don't think a lot of people, too many people are interested in, Houston, Kansas City. The Texans knocked out the team I was rooting for. I was rooting for Jim Harbaugh on the Chargers. Hold on 1 second.
Did Justin Herbert just throw another interception?
Yes, Justin Herbert just threw another interception. Mind-blowing what happened to him last week, but we get Kansas City, Houston now because of that, and the quest for the three-peat starts. The last time the Texans played the Chiefs in a divisional playoff, Houston jumped out to a 24-0 lead. But the final score was 51-31. So I don't think we see a repeat of the 24-0. I think we might see a repeat of a 20-point win, though.
Wouldn't it be something, though, if this Kansas City team that's played with fire and has, had – how many of their wins come by 7 points or less? Wouldn't it be interesting that this team that has played with fire all year, if they got burned by the team that most people expected to be the weakest in the AFC field? Possibly the weakest. Certainly the weakest division champ.
Of the Final Four, I don't think there's a question that they're the weakest.
Right, but you could have made a case that because people were pretty high on Denver. And people were also pretty high on the Chargers and the job Harbaugh did. I think if you're talking about confidence in, just the overall team, the Texans America might have had the least amount of confidence in the Texans as opposed to any of the other 6 in the AFC field.
I don't have my confidence ratings handy, but yeah, I mean, D'Amico Ryans would have been a 1 for me. CJ Stroud, I think, was 2.
That line.
And would be the lower numbers, like the least confident I have in. The running game would have been low. But listen, it's the NFL and everybody has a chance to win, especially now here in the AFC Final Four. Going to Kansas City is hard, and I think a lot of the most recent Chiefs games, notwithstanding the Denver Week 18 game, they clinched their division in early December. I think they just hit cruise control. And I think Andy Reid and their quarterback, who people are going to already proclaim as the greatest ever, I think they know how to turn the switch in the playoffs. I would love to see Houston win this. I would, because I'm part of the mass that is just, I'm tired of Kansas City. I'm tired of them winning the way they win. They feel like a professional wrestling heel that's getting help from the ref. Like, this pass interference call wasn't called, or this pass interference was called. Yes, it was the first game of the year. Baltimore's receiver's toe was out of bounds by this much. Yes, it was out of bounds. Yeah, I get it.
Did I hear the rumor that the lead official on this game is going to be Dangerous Danny Davis? Is there any truth to that?
It might be Earl Hebner, and you're going to see the $100 bills out of his out of his pants. How much money did they pay for the frame?
See, I think, and if it was the Eagles playing the Chiefs, I wouldn't be saying this. But since I don't have a horse in this race, I think that kind of intrigue is amazing. Like that, no matter what happens in this game, it's either going to be, oh, the refs helping out the Chiefs. Or if the Texans beat them, it's like, oh, the refs finally couldn't help the Chiefs out. Because, the way that people like to say that this is staged, that has been happening forever. Like one of my, earliest sports memories from junior high was when Jordan retired for the first time, and everyone was like, "Yeah, because David Stern caught him gambling and said he had to sit down for 18 months." And it's like, oh, okay, adjust your tinfoil hat.
I see. I didn't hear that theory until way, way later, but it intrigued me. I was interested in that person's newsletter. Yeah, I mean, there was some logic behind there a little bit. I mean,
Well,
you're going to suspend Michael Jordan. I mean, come on, that's Michael Jordan.
it's like when the WWE couldn't suspend Hogan for steroids, so they had to say like Tugboat put him in the hospital.
Now it was Earthquake, and I think that's when Hogan was going to shoot a movie.
Oh, that's right.
But there might have been another one of those rant. And let's talk about that for a second, because oh my gosh, the World Wrestling Federation put together this awesome video package, and it was like, if you want to send your letter to the get well letter to the Hulkster, they gave you P.O. Box 96 in whatever store, Connecticut, wherever they were. The letters just piled in, and the U.S. Postal Service cleaned up on stamps from little Hulkamaniacs who now just recently have turned on Hogan when they found out what kind of business he did, and where his head is, not even politically, just what kind of person he was behind the scenes, and he just got booed off stage at Raw. That was something else.
I can remember even being 11 or 12 years old, and Vince McMahon being like, "If you want to wish the Hulkster well," and I was like, that's for babies. And meanwhile, I was writing a get well card to Larry Bird after his back surgery. I was like, "Larry, I love you more than my dad."
Wherever you get your entertainment from, that's good. But I mean, this is where we're going, talking about Kansas City, Houston. We're talking about Tugboat and Earthquake potentially knocking out Hulk Hogan from World Wrestling Federation title contention. Amazing.
I truly am okay with either outcome in this game, by the way. I know, the country is rooting against the Chiefs because they are, what the Patriots had been. Mahomes is what Brady had been. And it's, it's not cool to root for, Johnny Lawrence to beat up Daniel Lewis.
You're going to say it. This is weird. I like dynasties. I do. I rooted for San Antonio. Golden State was in the middle of yeah, give me more titles. If Chicago wasn't going to win, I didn't care that New England was winning. And this is a New York fan rooting for New England. If Michigan couldn't do it, when Alabama was rolling through people my dad's an Alabama fan, that was fine for me. I don't know why Kansas City winning 3 in a row would bother me as much as it's going to.
Yeah. I also kind of feel like the window's closing a little in Kansas City. So I think that's why, for me, if I see them win one more, it'll just be Andy Reid had so many, close calls in Philly that good. Get another ring, Andy.
He's another grilled cheese and a.
Maybe that's what it is for me. Just like the affection I have for Andy Reid.
I got you. Totally understandable. Totally understandable. I'm not sure that. I'm not sure this one's going to be a game. I think I didn't write it down, but I'm going to go Kansas City 32-10. 30, I'll give them 14, 32-14.
I'm going to stick with the pattern that Kansas City hasn't really blown anyone out. I'm going to say it's 21. No, I'm going to say 24-20.
Okay, there you go. So I don't think we differ on much. This game, holy cow, this game is going to be awesome. The game that really feels like it's the preamble to the Chiefs. This is heavyweight on heavyweight. This is such a big matchup.
This feels like a conference championship.
It does, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm even more bothered, because it feels to me like you're going to say it's a close game, but it feels like Kansas City is almost getting a bye into the finals. They're the $1 million man, and here we have Randy Savage versus the Ultimate Warrior. You got Lamar, Josh, the 2 MVPs, Derrick Henry, James Cook, who had a great game last week. Orchard Park, 18 degrees. 6:30 game, the sunset. It's going to be cold. This is going to be, oh baby, I can't wait for this one.
Yeah. I mean, this is obviously, well, the Eagles are the highlight of the weekend for me, but just for, like a casual fan who might not have a horse in the race, this is obvious. This is the prime, this is the filet mignon right here. I don't, I'm leaning toward Buffalo just with them being at home, but I don't know if my tone of voice gives it away. I don't feel super confident in that pick.
So this is the game I'm picking a close one. I'm going to take Buffalo too, super close, and it's really, I think it's going to be a back and forth game. I really like the running the running back battle, but I think it's going to come down to which quarterback makes a mistake, and I don't know. I can just see like a weird tipped pass or a strip sack. Lamar trying to make something happen. Just because, again, I'm with you. It's in Buffalo. It's at Orchard Park, Highmark Stadium, I think it's called. And
yeah,
I miss the days of Rich Stadium, but that's whatever.
I think Lamar is the better of the two quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
Although
they're
they're both great, but Lamar's the better of the two.
The MVP, I think, this year.
But outside of Derrick Henry, Lamar is surrounded by less. And I think that's also where sort of like my hedging confidence kind of goes toward Buffalo. Where you have guys doing moon flips through tables in the parking lot. And, I just think between the atmosphere and, the storyline seems to be building for like Josh Allen for MVP. This kind of feels like his Steve Young in 94, 95 moment. Get the monkey off my back.
I looked at the numbers earlier, and I'm a numbers geek. Bills are 9-0 at home. They're averaging 33 points a game at home. They're winning by an average of 18 points at home, and it's going to be the best team Baltimore's defense played. I mean, all year. I mean, and that's including Kansas City. I have a lot of friends who are fans of both of these teams. So, like, one of my fraternity brothers is a massive Buffalo fan. Really good friend of mine here in town is a Ravens fan. So I can honestly say I will bandwagon whoever wins this game. I'm legitimately cool with either team winning, but whoever wins, I'm taking them the whole way.
Over Philadelphia?
Well, I mean, if Philadelphia gets there, I mean, I'll feel good for you, but you know me and Pennsylvania teams, man. I mean,
plus the Eagles have a Super Bowl that's still fresh, relatively fresh in
relatively. Sports. I mean, Baltimore's won fairly recently too. They won the Harbaugh Bowl, but I mean, Buffalo's the team of the '90s, somewhere in wherever they send the shirts. Like, man, these Bills are good.
Some kid in Sarajevo is walking around in a Buffalo Bills 1992 champion shirt.
Big heads like Andre Reed and Bruce Smith and Thurman Thomas, like those style shirts back in the 90s. Those were awesome, by the way.
He's got like Zubaz pants, a 92 Bills Super Bowl champion shirt, and like his Portland Trail Blazers NBA champion hat.
Oh, wow. That sounds like somebody we know. Zubaz with a Portland Trailblazer hat.
He's if we're talking about the multiverse, he's the multiversal Max Gemelli.
There it is. So you're going Buffalo close. I'm going Buffalo close.
I'm going Buffalo close. I'm going high scoring, even despite the weather. I mean, they're both cold weather teams.
I went 26.
I'm going 31-28.
Okay, that's 3 points, 2 points. Did we pick the same all NFL team? I think the only game we differed on was college.
Notre Dame, yeah.
Yeah, well, that'll be the tiebreaker this week, and
that just means one of us has to be right.
We will see. Yeah, I mean, watch. If we're all wrong in the NFL, then I mean, the way I picked the NFL this year, I wouldn't be shocked.
One of us is going 1-4, and the other's going 0-5.
What a brutal week that'll be.
Can you imagine if I go 0-5 and Ohio State wins the national title and the Eagles lose?
Picked Ohio State to win the national title, so you can't go 0-5.
Oh, that's right. But it would feel like a loss regardless.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, it's going to be -5 degrees on Tuesday, so you got that to look forward to.
Oh God.
Speaking of bad weeks, and that's a terrible segue. I was really bummed out by this. The world of baseball bidding farewell to one of its most cherished figures, Bob Uecker, passed away at the age of 90 on Thursday. Mr. Baseball, Bob Uecker's larger-than-life personality and unmatched wit. Let's get that straight. Just made him a beloved presence on and off the field, captivating fans of all generations. Tim, I know you sometimes you struggle with video, but I'm gonna put this on. You can go back and watch it. I found this online. Credit to I'll give the credit to the TikTok guy afterwards. It's 2 minutes. 2 minutes of Bob Uecker. Super Meatballs people enjoy this. Take a listen.
Goodbye, Detroit. Hello, New York. Hi, Robbie Fingers. What a job he is being mobbed by his teammates as the Brewers have come from behind today to beat Detroit by a score of 2-1. Here we go with Ryan Braun. The pitch to him. Swinging a drive. Left center and deep. Get out. Get out of here. Gone for Ryan Braun. And they've got the lead. Whoa. What a shot by Braun. It's his 37th of the year.
Against Mesa, who is working from the windup. The 0-1 pitch. Swings, and there it is. A base hit in the right center. He's done it. 3,000 for Robin.
Puts glove on knee. Has a new sign from Blanco. He's ready and delivers. Morgan a smash up the middle. Base hit to center. Here comes Gomez. Around third. A throw and the Brewers win. The Brewers are moving on a base hit by Niger Morgan. He's being mobbed.
Vaughn into the windup in his first offering. Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed. Ball 4. Ball 8. Low, and Vaughn has walked the bases loaded on 12 straight pitches. Boy, how can these guys...
Were you able to hear any of that?
Yeah, I got the whole clip.
Oh, cool, good. So, what's strange about this for me, my memories of Bob Uecker, Major League notwithstanding, were actually from watching Mr. Belvedere and Miller Lite commercials. But this one really bummed me out like a lot.
You know, it gave me the thought because he was 90. And he'd been, in the public eye since, the 60s as a player. And, his playing career ended by the time we were babies. He was already an announcer. I wonder how many people who are even just slightly younger than us even know of him as a baseball player. Or if they just think of him as the Brewers announcer who was in Major League.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of him. I don't think of him as a baseball player, and I'll throw out the stats for you. Lifetime 200 hitter. He's got 146 more hits than you and I combined, but he's also hit into 18 more double plays than you and I have combined. I mean, there's a guy with 14 career home runs and less than 100 career runs batted in. It's just I remember him from having the greatest dry sense of humor and a self-deprecating wit that I think somehow, like, I don't think it rubbed off on me naturally. Like, poke fun at myself all the time. Nothing like what Euchre could do. And,
Yeah.
and
I think that's what's so interesting about him is that, the typical athlete, I think it's tougher for them to have like that self-deprecating sense of humor, because so much of like being an elite athlete, and make no mistake, Bob Euchre was elite, someone who gets to the major leagues. I don't care if they hit 200 or 350. That's something most of us never have the opportunity even to play double A baseball. Okay. So when you're an athlete at that level, you are always trying to convince yourself, like you're fighting against imposter syndrome, where you're like, I can absolutely do this unthinkable thing that no one else in the world can do. I can hit this fastball and then adapt to a changeup or adapt to a curve, And Euchre had this mentality where he was like, you know what? I wasn't anything special. Okay, I was a 200 hitter. I was slow. I would go out to tell Bob Gibson what he should pitch.
Robinson.
Yeah, where he beat him to the bag. The first Bob Euchre story I heard about him as a player was when he went out to talk to Bob Gibson at the mound, and Bob Gibson says to him, "Euchre, the only thing you know about good pitching is you can't hit it." And it's Euchre telling the story. Yeah. Like, I just think his willingness to be the butt of the joke in the Miller Lite commercials, wherever, is what made him so endearing.
I mean, so I watched a bunch of Bob Euchre stuff. So when I knew I remembered him from TV, and I had to look it up. I mean, I don't have a lot of memories of Mr. Belvedere, so I'm like, let me watch some Mr. Belvedere on YouTube. Couldn't find any. I found the music, the intro to it, and like that didn't even ring a bell.
Great theme song, by the way. I remember that theme song.
I found an interview he did with David Letterman, though, and Letterman could not stop laughing. And Bob Euchre just kind of looked at him like, well, what are you laughing at? I'm just telling you, one of my greatest moments in baseball. I drew a bases loaded walk one time. Yeah, it helped win our inter-squad game.
I think Letterman liked genuine people, though, like, because Euchre was a character. Like, he was out there telling dad jokes, essentially.
Yeah, but that was him the whole time. When I would have loved to have a call of Bob Euchre and Phil Rizzuto together. That might make any game worth like 1,000 times more. Those two, just the stories they would tell. But Bob's sense of humor about himself, unmatched.
I think broadcasting needs more personalities like Rizzuto, like Euchre, former players who are more than a little bit of a homer. But also then when the team does not live up to their homer standards, become hypercritical, like a Hawk Harrelson or, whoever. I think that's something that's been lost a little bit with the corporatization of broadcasting. Also, I wanted to talk, it's always a minor pet peeve of mine in movies where broadcasters or reporters are played by actors who get it just slightly wrong because they've never done it. It's always a pet peeve of mine, like when a broadcaster is doing a radio broadcast, but you can hear them over the PA for some reason in movies. Okay. And those are two things that Major League gets exactly right. They cast an actual broadcaster to play a broadcaster. And it's played for laughs throughout the movie, one hit,
Most incredible thing about that movie, though, he ad-libbed all his lines.
Right. And then
nobody wrote them. And he's the funniest part of that movie.
But then he's also what makes the ending so emotionally like powerful is when he gets up out of his chair and the Indians win it. The Indians win it. Oh my God, the Indians win it. He has a real broadcaster's enthusiasm that takes the viewer of the movie right into that moment and makes it feel like Tom Berenger and Wesley Snipes just won the American League pennant.
And Monty, who
he's not the best color guy in the league for nothing.
Is well played. Does Monty have a line besides "you can't say that on the air"?
Well, at one point he says, "Hey Monty, you got anything you want to add?" And he goes, "No." He's not the best color guy in the league for nothing, folks.
And that's good stuff. Like, and the great fans of Milwaukee had that for 54 seasons. That's a long time. It really is. But to be sorely missed. That the fans that visit Milwaukee now, they've already started putting the memorials out. Then the videos I've seen of that are just they add to something that just bums me out. Like I had a tough day on Friday anyway, and that didn't help. Like knowing that Bob Uecker was around in this world just made the world better, and it's less better now.
Who do you think is his like natural successor as like just universally beloved older guy, like it had been, Uecker or Vince Scully, Yogi Berra, like those types of guys who are just beloved baseball guys, like older than 80? Like
I have no idea.
Yeah, I'd have to think about it too.
Yeah.
Because, like, you think of like some of the great guys, like they're usually kind of prickly or standoffish, like Schmidt or Sandy Koufax. I don't know who it would be. I'd have to think.
The only name I can even remotely think of died a long time ago. Don Zimmer.
Yeah, he would qualify.
But yeah, I mean, now, yeah, that's a. Give me some time to get the producer on the phone and I'll do some thinking. I don't know.
Google baseball people who the nation has a lot of affection for.
Yeah. Speaking of baseball people with affection, Bob Uecker, not a Hall of Fame player, Hall of Fame announcer, was given the Ford Frick Award. The class of 2025 though coming up on the 21st. So that's Tuesday, right?
Yep.
There's a guy online, Mr. Tibbs, who tracks votes. Like if a writer makes their ballots public, he'll track them, and he has this Google sheet that he tracks and he shares with people. There's 43% of known ballots out there. 160 of them are public, and I have to check my link here. There are 4 people currently who would be enshrined right now. Have you seen the list?
The last I'd seen, Ichiro was still running perfect.
Yep, he is.
CC was in the 90s.
Yep, 92.9.
But I forget who else.
Billy Wagner right now at 84.7, and Carlos Beltran at 80. Then close enough to you think about is Andrew Jones is at 72.4, and then the next guy is Chase Utley at 53.
It's wild to me that Andrew Jones and Carlos Beltran are not flipped.
Well, we had our
Jones is such a no doubt about it Hall of Fame kind of guy when you consider the switch hitting power numbers and his defense. And Beltran, I'm not taking anything away from Beltran. I just think Andrew Jones was the better player, both at his peak and for the duration.
I forget who we when we talked about this when we actually put our votes in. I think you swayed me. You turned me around on Andrew Jones a little, but he was in my. I felt pretty good about. I'm looking down the list of people who they're not going to make it, but they might still stay on the ballot. What do you need to stay on the ballot? 10 or 20%?
I think 20%.
If it's 20, then Jimmy Rollins is right at 20, and you got Bobby Abreu, Felix Hernandez, Andy Pettitte, Manny Ramirez, A-Rod. They're 40 and below. But it's a darn shame that Ben Zobrist hasn't garnered a vote yet.
So they're still really harshly punishing the steroid guys or the rumored steroid guys.
Yeah, it appears that way. And I don't know.
But ceilings in.
That exactly. That is it. I flip flop on that in my head so often. I look at it and like, well, the Hall of Fame's a museum, and this is the stuff that happened. But then the Hall of Fame's an honor that should be rewarding people who did it the right way. But it's a story you can't take back, and everybody was doing it. I am so on the fence about that. It depends on what day I wake up, how I feel, honestly. I think that there could be a place on the plaque that said, this player played during this era and was was suspected of using, or
I think that's
was
inappropriate.
found to have been a user.
I think you only do that for guys who actually, like A-Rod, that should be on his plaque. Like, was suspended for failing a steroid test. Everyone else should have the presumption of innocence unless they were proven to have used. And I also think in voting, I had the moral high ground in like 2003, 2004, or the righteous indignation where I was like, oh, they tainted the beautiful game. It's like, oh, shut up, young Tim. Look, they weren't testing for any drugs. It was the Wild West. Anyone could have used whatever kind of substance they wanted until drug tests were included in the collective bargaining agreement. And I'm not advocating look, steroids is a great way to ruin your body. Lyle Alzado taught us that. But the game as it was played, unless you were found to actually be cheating, I don't think that should be a mark that's held against you.
I don't feel differently today. Well, call me tomorrow after the Ravens-Bills game. We'll see how I feel. I don't know. But we're going to find out on Tuesday who the class of 2025 is, and whether or not Ichiro is at 100%. That seems to be a non-question. Ichiro, I heard this on the radio yesterday. Ichiro can be held responsible for a lot of things, including the MLB Plus app. Because back when Ichiro signed, Major League Baseball was struggling and scrambling to try to find a way to broadcast his games over to Japan. Huh. So, I mean, he not only what he did on the field, but what he did off the field. He's been a trendsetter.
And I'm curious because there had been Japanese pitchers who had made the transition to MLB, but Ichiro was the first, position player. And I do wonder what it would have done to the game if Ichiro would have just come in and flopped. Like if it would have set back, the stream of position players who we now see from Asia, and doing well in MLB. Like if Ichiro had come out, hit 210, and just fallen on his face, I wonder if it would have been like, oh, well, those guys can't play.
I think you still would have seen, like the position player that's popping into my mind, believe it or not, Hideki Matsui. I think he still comes over. Whether he has success or not, again, has no bearing on Ichiro's success. I think it might have affected posting. Like when Boston posted Daisuke Matsuzaka, the was crazy at the time. I was like, oh my God, like Boston spent like $65 million or something just to talk to this guy. Holy cow.
Right.
That definitely changes, but
right.
I think as long as there's talent anywhere, I mean, somebody in Major League Baseball is going to go looking for it.
And I also think, and this is just a little nit I have to pick with Major League Baseball Hall of Fame voting. I just know that there's someone out there who is not making their ballot known, who then is going to be like, yeah, I was the one who didn't vote for Ichiro, and let me tell you why, so they can get a column out of it.
Well, I mean, let's go back in time. Mariano Rivera gets 100%. Okay, cool. The next year, Derek Jeter's on the list. He misses out by one vote. That was 2020. We didn't have a good year that year. Just saying.
So you think that voter who left Jeter off the ballot is the one who gave us COVID?
Yes.
He is the Wuhan bat.
Yes. I'm just saying. I mean,
well, we've identified patient zero.
Name 6 players with more major league hits. You can't do it. I don't care about your defensive metrics.
Like you think about like Joe DiMaggio, not only was he not unanimous, he didn't even get in on the first 3 ballots. Yeah, just the amount of power that's given to these people and how much it goes to their heads.
What they'll tell you, and this this blows my mind too. I know Ichiro's going to get in. He doesn't need my vote, but I really think Jimmy Rollins is a Hall of Famer, and he does to stay on my ballot. Dude's polling at 20%. He's not going to get up to 75. I'm sorry. His numbers aren't going to change, which makes me wonder. Like, Billy Wagner's on the list for the 10th year. How is he a Hall of Famer this year? He wasn't a Hall of Famer 5 years ago.
I think that's why. Well, everyone gets into the Basketball Hall of Fame, so let's not use that as an example. That's the most inclusive Hall of Fame in the world. But like the Football Hall of Fame, we don't really know the football voters. They don't make a big show of their ballot the way the baseball guys do. And I feel like the Football Hall of Fame voting process is a more pure form where the focus is not on the voter. It's on the player being considered.
It's
like the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. The Major League Baseball Hall of Fame would be like if we had trials, like criminal trials, and then every juror got to stand up in open court and be like, all right, well, let me tell you why this guy, because, my neighbor tried to kill his wife, okay? And if that guy didn't go to jail, then this guy's not going to jail. So I vote innocent. Thank you for my 5 minutes in the sun.
And this guy, Mr. Tibbs, is making these voters know, but they're doing it themselves. He's just organizing it and curating it. Yeah, the fact that they're broadcasting their vote and then writing stories about it, they're getting copy out of it. Like it's an opinion piece for a lot of them.
Right, and a lot of them oftentimes are advocating for players, because we saw that a few years ago where Ryan Spader on Twitter was advocating for Edgar Martinez, which, look, if you have the platform, it's an appropriate use of the platform if you're like, I think this guy is deserving. But I don't believe Spader had a vote. I think he was trying to influence people who did have a vote.
Well, you know what? I'm okay with that. I mean,
I'm okay with
what
that
you just
too.
said. Like, I have a vote, and I want you to vote like me. I can get on Twitter and do the same thing and argue that the Veterans Committee should put Todd Mattingly in, but nobody's going to listen to me. I don't have. I
agree with that. If it's a good faith argument to be like, look, and I do believe Edgar Martinez belongs in the Hall of Fame, and I'm glad he's been inducted. But like first of all, I think the voters should be anonymous. And I don't think they should be allowed to write about the process because they are essentially creating news which they then comment on. It's such an ethical, loophole. Like,
I would
truly, it would be like, again, to use like a criminal trial as the comparison. It would be like if a court reporter were like, well, look, I also get a vote on whether this guy goes to jail, and it's going to sell more papers if OJ's guilty, so guilty.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to write a blistering commentary about it.
I might write a whole series with a Sunday feature. Yeah, exactly, with an insert, as they do in the newspaper. No, exactly. We'll find out Tuesday, one way or the other. And like we said, if Ichiro is at 100%, he will be the second player to do that. The first player from Japan to do that. Speaking of players from Japan, Roki
the first
Sasaki,
non-Panamanian as well.
Roki Sasaki, who is considered one of the most talented young pitchers in the world. That's right, the world. It surprised no one in New York. When he said he wasn't coming to New York, it really was just a matter of time and when he was going to sign with the Dodgers. Is this how the rest of the league felt about the Yankees in the 90s when they were like just bringing people in? I'm tired of all the people going to LA.
I think this is more how the rest of the world felt about the Yankees in the 2000s when they were signing the Mussinas and the Randy Johnsons and the Browns.
I meant
at least
late
in the 90s, it was homegrown talent. Like the Dodgers have conceivably like a 5-man rotation of guys with number one stuff.
Yes.
And they could put together like an 8-man rotation, possibly, if they so chose.
Yamamoto, Glasnow, Snell, Ohtani, and Sasaki. Sasaki, he's an unknown. I think he's an unknown with massive upside potential. If you've watched him pitch in the WBC, I wouldn't put Sasaki as a number one anywhere else. Any one of those other four could probably be number ones 85% of the other clubs.
Yeah.
And they're all together. The one thing that I will say that the Dodgers in the last couple of years have been hurt by injuries. Ohtani's not scheduled to pitch until May. So, I mean, that to ease him in. I don't know, aside from Glasnow, Snell, Yamamoto, Sasaki, and Ohtani, I don't know who the other starter might be, but here's an example of where, you could have a 6-man rotation, give Ohtani that extra day, give Sasaki the extra day, because the difference in am I remembering something wrong that that the baseball in Japan was smaller, or am I my head screwed up?
I hadn't heard that, and that would I can't imagine that's true.
It sounded stupid saying it, but
I feel like there has to be a universal standard, unlike men's and women's basketballs where that changes.
Yeah. Well, but a Major League Baseball versus a Japanese baseball, I'm not sure. Maybe I read something wrong, but even still, the level of talent in the National League versus what Sasaki pitched against last year, there's going to be some growing pains. Even for Yamamoto, his first couple starts were just awful before he turned it around. But Sasaki's their number. He could be a 5. Can you imagine your number 5 pitcher is a 1 or 2 somewhere else? That's just.
And this feels not unlike the way that obviously Jackie Robinson with black players, or like Roberto Clemente being Puerto Rican and sort of breaking the barrier for like Hispanic players. I think over the last 20, 25 years, the way we're seeing more and more major league teams looking to Korea, looking to Japan to try to bring in players from Asia. I think that's been one of the stories of the major leagues over the last 20 years that really hasn't been talked about that much. The way that, especially the way we see Asia kind of be a major player in the WBC. I think we're kind of seeing that explosion now, and not just Ichiro and Ohtani, but like utility guys, middle of the rotation guys, setup guys, like just good roster fillers, even like non-superstar players. So I think this is just the latest in a trend that's been going on, for 25, 30 years.
What's really frustrating about this, and really I think the point that not a lot of people are going to talk about, Sasaki's younger than 25 years old, so he's considered an amateur free agent, which means he comes with 6 years of club control, and he's going to earn a rookie salary in 2025. Now I saw a report from the Athletics. He got a $6.5 million signing bonus, but he's not coming with $70 million of deferred money.
Right.
He's going to face arbitration in 3 years. He is a rookie, which you have teams that, are clamoring for an international draft. This is why, where the rich go out and get richer. And I'll be honest, I'm being very hypocritical here. If he came to New York, I'd be doing cartwheels. But there is a reason there's an international money pool where people have money to spend on the international markets where these players aren't drafted. Sasaki kind of broke the mold in that he wasn't posted, so therefore he's not suspect to those contract terms. I think that he might be the first one who's done that for a player at his level.
It's a great sports what if that just occurred to me, because it was like right around when Curt Flood went through his ordeal to bring free agency to Major League Baseball, that Sadaharu Oh sort of became a name that people were aware of in the 70s in Japanese baseball, that he was the Japanese Babe Ruth. And I'm just curious if the timing had worked out when Curt Flood brought free agency to Major League Baseball, and if the front offices had been open to it, what the market would have been like for a Sadaharu O going from Japan to the major leagues in the 70s. Like we talked about the multiverse earlier. What would a multiversal 1970s Sadaharu O playing for like
or let's go like mid 60s. I mean, looking at O's, and he kind of his peak, I think, is 64 when he hit 55 home runs.
I was just even thinking just in the wake of like Kurt Flood was like 68.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he had 51 home runs in 73. So, I mean, MLB free agency was 72. I want to say. So I will.
Right around there, 71.
Right around there. I mean, so
Marvin Miller working with
he was in his mid 30s at that point. So I don't know if he would have like. What would a massive contract have been back then? Like 50 million, 40 million?
No, I remember it was like an early 80s Sports Illustrated that had a list of the biggest per year contracts in baseball.
Oh, not per year. No, I mean total overall.
Oh,
like would he get 5 at 50? Would he get 10 million a year?
No, and they weren't for that long of term back then either. It would have been like 5 years, 15 million maybe.
Okay. I for some reason I'm thinking Mattingly's contracts were around 3 million a year, 2.5 million a year. So yeah, that's.
I remember when Schmidt was the highest paid player in baseball, and he was like 2.73, something like that, over 4 or 5 years.
No, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I don't know how, and you don't know how he would have produced in Major League Baseball either. That'd be a cool multiverse.
That could be.
I like that.
That could be a topic for a future episode. Great sports what ifs.
Great sports what ifs. I like that. Another what if in New York. What if Pete Alonso's contract proposal to New York was taken? A lot of other notable free agents. We're about a month out of pitchers and catchers reporting. Bregman, Santander, Profar, a lot of big names still unsigned. But Pete Alonso, you had sent me a text that said Pete Alonso to the Twins,
which is still apparently just reported.
I didn't see any of it, and
it's either a strong rumor or I don't know if his agent's putting it out there to drive prices.
I saw a report on Newsweek that predicted Alonso to go to the Angels of all places.
He gets sick of playing in the playoffs.
But I mean, can you imagine the thumbing of the nose to the Mets? Like, I'm fine if you don't want me, I'll go play at one of the worst places to play. But it looks like Alonso's days with the Mets are done, which is a bummer because I think Pete Alonso was maybe not on the same level as a David Wright in New York, but he was a
production-wise, he was
a beloved figure there, I think.
Yeah, I think David Wright was more beloved. I think Pete Alonso is seen as being a little bit of a little bit aloof, maybe, whereas David Wright was just.
Here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do right now. I'm gonna have to time this. I'm gonna tag our buddy Capper. Capper is out in the world of the Book of Face, and he's one of the biggest Mets fans I know. So, Capper, what do you think of Pete Alonso trying to re-sign with the Mets and the Mets saying, no, we don't want you? And where does Pete Alonso rank for you among all-time Mets in terms of, like, how much the team appreciated him, what they thought of him? Like, I can tell you, Yankee fans who looked at, what Don Mattingly did, not making the playoffs, like, when Mattingly hit the home run in 94 or 95, I'm sorry. The building almost collapsed. They looked at a guy like Brett Gardner almost the same way. Like, Brett Gardner was not a world beater. He might have been an all-star once or twice. But Yankee fans loved him because he was like a hustle, get dirty guy. Red Sox fans, like Dustin Pedroia comes to mind. Like
Kevin Youkilis.
I hated him. But he was such a good player. He was such a good player.
Yeah.
Grimy, dirty, do the hustle stuff. Yeah, that. So Capper, where does Alonso fit? Like we'll get like we couldn't get you on as a guest here. We just thought of it now. So
especially after what Alonso did this past postseason, and particularly saving them against Milwaukee.
Yeah. So we'll get boots on the ground there with an actual Mets fan. But yeah, I'm surprised that Bregman hasn't signed yet, and Santana. I don't know what they're waiting. I don't know who their agents are, what they're waiting on, but I think we've seen players who don't have a spring training, like a full spring training, they struggle. Like see Blake Snell.
Nailed it, yeah, last year.
Get in camp, and it's not that these guys are coming to camp like David Wells or what they used to do in the 80s, like Steve Balboni would show up and I guess I got to start running now. They're 365 athletes, but there's something about being in camp with the guys.
Yeah, they're not waking up in a Tijuana bed with a strange woman and a bottle of tequila like Jake Taylor.
His knees are killing him. Give him a break.
But I don't like this trend where free agency is this long, drawn-out process. Like, I do miss where there was a flurry of signings right around. Like, the hot stove was a hot stove for a reason.
I mean, Thanksgiving and Christmas
peters out, and then players sign, halfway through spring training, or it takes away from the off season
a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. I don't think the Yankees are done. I mean, the Mets went out and they got a relief pitcher. I think his name is Minter. They spent $22 million on him. So they're not done either. Boston is in talks with. Actually, I saw something about Boston and Bregman 2 days ago when I was looking up free agents, but who knows?
How old's Bregman now?
Old enough.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Alex Bregman is a professional baseball player that was born on 1994. So,
oh my God.
30, 31.
He was born when we were in 10th grade.
Good year for the world. Yeah. But all right, let's move on here. Last week we were talking about how the Cavs were on pace. Hate that word. 72 wins, but now they've lost 2 of their last 3. And on Thursday, they just got blown out at home by Oklahoma City, the best team out west. Shea Gilchrist-Alexander knocks in for 40. Did you watch this game, Tim?
I watched with interest in the first half, and then
the first quarter.
Decreasing interest in the second half. Because the first game, like 2 weeks ago, was so good, but OKC just went in, grabbed control. I think they said during the broadcast, Cleveland, the biggest deficit they'd rallied from this year was 16 points. They were down by 40 at one point. I mean, it was just gross.
And the fourth quarter must have been like the JVs for Oklahoma City because that was the only quarter that Cleveland won. But the second and the third were it was like 45-26 and 43-30. It was bad.
It was one of those games where the refs just put the whistles in their pockets for the entire fourth quarter. And I think more than anything, it shows that as good as Cleveland has been, OKC is the best team in basketball right now. And they're the youngest. I mean, Shea is only 26. Chet Holmgren's like 23, 24. So not only are they maybe the most talented top to bottom, certainly in the West, I would say, but it's young talent, and they have a lot of draft picks coming to them.
Have we seen this before with Oklahoma City when they had another big 3?
Oh, sure.
Can they keep everybody?
I think they can keep Holmgren and Shea. I think those are the 2 big who they can keep and continue to build around as those guys get into their late 20s and 30s. I think Shea's just maybe a different mindset than Durant was. I think what's that?
He's not going to want like a big market. He's okay in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think he's fine in Oklahoma. I don't think Chet necessarily even needs the spotlight. And, it was also a different situation with Harden when Harden was in OKC because he wanted to break out and be
A sixth
the
man
guy.
Yeah. And you got to be the guy in Houston, and that's we all know how that turned out.
Yeah,
But,
and Philly and LA and Brooklyn.
That's something to keep an eye on. It's neat to see potential NBA Finals previews like this. The two top seeds in the league going at it. You don't expect it to be what it is.
And another point I'll say real quick about OKC is you always look at after Olympic years, who did the Olympics hurt and who got a boost from it. And I think Shea playing for Canada got a big boost. I think Wembanyama playing in France got a big boost. And I think it was detrimental to someone like Embiid, certainly, who might not play. They might just shut him down. He's not going to play for another 7 to 10 days because he has joint swelling. And I think they might just end his season.
What's Philadelphia playing for right now? I mean, they're
the 8th seed. They should be playing for Cooper Flag.
No, they're actually in there. They would be in the 11 spot right now in the East. Do they have like the whole play? Is there the play-in that I'm remembering? It's not the top 8 anymore. It's the top 10, right?
Yeah, I don't like this new format.
They're a game and a half out of the playoffs. But yeah, I'm for what? To go play Boston?
Right, for Paul George to play on tired legs in the second half so they can maybe get into the playoffs?
But we had this talk at the beginning of the year. Like they were already load managing game 1. Like
yeah, when Embiid shows up for the season opener, he's like, back's feeling a little tight, coach. I better save it for the weekend.
Which the coach is like, it is the weekend, you bum.
I like Embiid. I think in different circumstances, Philadelphia really could have, fallen in love with this guy and embraced him more than it has. But
tremendous player, such a great talent. But oh my gosh, the injury, the level of injuries, and just I hate to use the S word, but the level of softness, really.
Yeah, he's seen as more than a little bit of a foul merchant. And he's seen as more than a little bit a guy who can't get it done in May.
If he didn't fall so much, maybe he wouldn't be hurt so much. I'm just saying. Back to Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan once said if he changed his finishing move from the leg drop to something that was less bumpy, he would have extended his career by 5 years. So, I mean, there's something to be said for falling down.
That high-risk finisher, the leg drop.
It's a butt bump every time. That's got to hurt a little.
I mean, I'd rather do that than, do a Jimmy Snuka off the top rope.
Yeah, but I think we'd both rather do the Ric Flair figure 4.
Wow.
That's less strain on everybody involved. Although, I'm going to talk wrestling for a second just because I can. Okay. I was scrolling through some of my saved videos on the talk as it may be going away. Who knows? And one of the videos I came upon that I saved, if you go back to WrestleMania 5 and you watch the flying elbow that Randy Savage hits on Hogan before he does his whole, hulking up thing, it looks like Savage is floating in the air. That the hang time he gets is just, oh my gosh, it's amazing. So like another high risk move that takes some years off your career doing those bumps. Savage's elbow, like he was just floating before he came down. It was awesome.
That's what was so great about Savage is, he was like one of those high flyer guys of that era, but he was still built like a tank. But when he went off that top rope and he would just kind of give that elbow a little English, kind of graceful before he'd slam it down.
And speaking of how hard it is to make it to the majors, I mean, Randy Poffo, 16 minor league home runs, my producer just tells me, but none hit harder than that flying elbow in WrestleMania 5. Awesome. But yeah, we're now comparing Joel Embiid to Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, which is just phenomenal. It's why this show is what it is.
Well, Embiid's almost certainly more popular than Hogan at this point. I'll give him that.
In Philadelphia, I think it might be close.
Yeah.
I don't know. Another person not so popular, maybe in their hometown, Jimmy Butler came back, knocked 18 in for Miami as they lost a 20-point game to the Denver Nuggets. And what I can take from this is where we've gone statistically as a people. People like my dad who look at baseball analytics are going to go nuts at this. I saw this in an article. I'm going to quote. In Friday's game, meaning Butler, his average touch length was 2.75 seconds, according to Second Spectrum, his lowest in any game as a member of the Heat, and he averaged 1.6 dribbles per touch, which was his second lowest figure of the season. Who is tracking how many dribbles a player has, and where can I see a list of who has the highest dribbles per touch? I'm intrigued.
And I'm curious what that information yields. Like, are you trying? It's like I can see if you're trying to cut down on like ISO and keep the ball moving, it could be useful. Like who's on the court and how much is the ball moving, but otherwise,
like Jalen Brunson, the point guard, he dribbles the ball up the court. Is that skewing his dribbles per touch?
Yeah, or what if you are trying to focus on something in the post? So say everything's running through Jokic and he's backing down a guy, to throw like a beautiful swing pass to the corner. Is that a detriment that Jokic held the ball for 7 seconds before getting it out for an open three?
If he's in the lane, yes. Is that still a penalty or a whistle?
Oh yeah, 3 seconds is very much a
violation. That's what I couldn't think of the term. I was calling it a flag because it was football. No, you can't hold it in the lane for 3 seconds. Okay.
Right. Yeah. No. But like,
I don't know if they changed the rules.
Yeah, but like on the block or however you want to phrase it. But
0.7 seconds per touch, though. Like, I don't know what that's telling you.
I mean,
that's just amazing to me.
I guess I could see how it could be somewhat useful for someone who plays on the wing like Butler. But
you're the one following basketball. Like I could break down analytics of baseball and talk about how they might be useful. Like if you can't tell me why I should care about dribbles per touch, I don't know if I should. And I was really interested at first. Like, ooh.
I would be open. Like, I'll keep an open mind. I would be open to hearing what the benefit is to tracking it.
Well, I don't know if there's any basketball coaches or fans that are on my Facebook feed. I am pretty good buddies with my school's basketball coach. I have no call. I'll send him an email. Like, hey, do you care about this? See what he says. Look at all this research we have to do now.
Honestly, like, if you go back to like everything that the NBA is doing right now was inspired in some form by Mike D'Antoni, which was also sort of like an adaptation of like the old Paul Westhead philosophy, which was score as many points as quickly as you can. That's why Loyola, like in the late 80s and 90s, was averaging like 130 in the NCAA, that's kind of where the NBA is now. So I could see, not wanting to dribble a lot and not wanting to hold onto the ball, but get it up court, get it to the corner, swing it around, and get an open three.
So this wasn't on the list, but you make me think about this. Have you heard, or what do you think about the NBA's possible, like, they're considering changing the rules of like the 3-point, they're getting rid of the corner three or stuff like that? That makes sense to you? Like, you can see you shaking your head. You're not a fan.
Yeah. At first blush, I don't like it at all. It's the same way that I don't like the idea of MLB getting rid of the defensive shifts.
Yeah, that's dumb to me. But
like if you can't get the ball down the third base line when the third baseman isn't at third base, then you deserve to be out. If you can't put together between man or zone a defense that's going to, even if it opens up everything from 15 feet in, if you can't completely take away the 3-pointer, then you deserve to give up 33s in a game. There are tactical things you can do to combat it. You would rather just turn to the league office and be like, make them stop doing that. And I don't like that.
I got you. That makes sense. I'm from a baseball perspective, I don't disagree about the shifts and
it's
all
the same.
that. I like watching people ground into the shift as much as I like watching teams go 10 for 64 from the 3-point line over the course of a game.
That was always one of my favorite things about watching Syracuse when they were really good, and they would go out and throw that 2-3 at teams. And then the challenge would be, okay, can the other team shoot enough holes in the zone to make Syracuse maybe have to back off or even go into man? That's the tactical, that's the fun strategy that makes it so entertaining.
I miss the days when Syracuse was competitive. Those days are gone. But
Well, yeah.
Jimmy, so Butler's still in the trade block, I guess. No word as to anybody who wants him. We will keep you up to date on all the Jimmy Butler news that you could possibly want to hear.
We'll see if Capper has any scoop on Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody knows, it's going to be Capper. But here's the moment you've all been waiting for: Soup and Meatballs draft time. Interesting draft today. Tim, you came up with it. Why don't you break us down?
I thought that this national championship is just so distasteful to two Michigan fans that we would have to pick our favorite graduates of either Notre Dame or Ohio State.
Which I will say, I probably read that wrong, because you're going to go about this a much different way than I am. I went with my favorite football players from that were alums. Totally cool though, so we probably don't have a lot of overlap.
Yeah, I went with anyone who graduated from either school, real or fictional, by the way.
Fictional. No, this is going to be a great list. It's like George Steinbrenner did not make my list. He probably would have otherwise. So here's what we're going to do.
I also picked two of the worst examples of graduates from each school.
Oh. Give me a number and a color.
8. Black.
8 black. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. I gotta get this out of light. 5, 6, 7. Here's number 8. Dude, I feel like Bill Murray in Ghostbusters. It's not your lucky day.
It defies statistical probability at this point.
It does. I play while I get these things put away. I play a dice baseball league online, and we use this website called Roll20. And what's interesting about the way the game works, it's a die rolling thing. You have to roll a d20. So let me look over here, as I have a vat of dice. None of them are d20. Oh, yep, I do. I have a d20 here, 20-sided die. Now, when the online system is rolling, it generally goes in streaks. You get low numbers, then high numbers, and sometimes then a mix. My opponent and I rolled, I think, 9 consecutive single-digit numbers, which somebody in our league calculated out, like the percentage of that is like 2.3% or something like that. So what you're doing with the cards, maybe not to that level, but yeah, there you go.
I also love our wildly different stylistic choices for how we film our halves of this, where you've got that steady, do you have a little tripod for your phone or whatever?
It's the laptop.
Okay. Whereas mine's the Blair Witch Project. Right, it's like I'm running through the Maryland woods.
Are you handheld?
Yeah, I'm on my phone.
I know you're on your phone, but are you holding it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh, dude. We got to get you a tripod. Your arm's got to be burning by the we're in 93 minutes already.
No,
do you switch arms at least?
I got them big boy tries.
Are you like Rigotti bowling and his left arm was like this and his right arm was meh?
No, I usually just hold it righty here. I can write with either hand, so I've got the pen in my left hand.
Well, I'll tell you what. So the way I looked at my lists, I looked at football players, and I tried to make a list of players I would have seen. So Dave Duerson of Notre Dame, not going to make the list. Jack Tatum from Ohio, not going to make my list. And I tried to pick players that people would have heard of. So fans of Notre Dame tackle Mike Perino, I'm sorry. And yeah, their record against Michigan came into play. That took Ricky Waters off the list. He was 4-0. So I don't think there's going to, if you know me, I don't think there's any major shocker who my number one is going to be. He was 0-3-1 against Michigan at his time in Ohio State, but he was the ultra back. I'm taking Raymond Harris as somebody I liked as a football player from Ohio State.
So I was relatively certain you were going to take Raymond Harris, so I didn't even put him on my list. And anyone who knows you had the ultra back shirt for under your pads.
I sent you the picture. I found it. Did I send you the picture?
I believe so.
The half shirt, and I put it on. It's not flattering.
I'm telling you, you have to wear the Raymond half shirt, and I'll wear my Saul Sereni League Champ shirt for what we'll have like a throwback '90s episode.
Nice. You know what? That should be coming because we missed the one show where we were doing something with the '90s. So yeah, let's one of these slow days where after the Super Bowl, when there's only hockey and basketball to talk about.
Deal. But no, Raymond Harris, no surprise there. So I don't feel so bad about losing the card shuffle for like the 8th straight week.
I thought about should I draft Raymond 5th because I don't think he's making Tim's list, but it's a draft like with that in mind. He was ranked. The rest of them I kind of have sort of just I don't have them ranked, but I have an idea of who I would pick to.
So my number one, I feel reasonably certain is on your list. He is he was maybe the most exciting player in college football for his time at Notre Dame, and he's a regional guy.
Yes, he is.
Rocket Ishmael.
Yeah, Rocket Ishmael.
The pride of Wilkes-Barre GAR.
He was a Myers kid.
Oh, was he Myers?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm thinking of Skrepenak was GAR.
Yeah. I actually have Rahib Ishmael from Myers High School.
Right, because Kadri and then their brother, who I don't remember his first name, but he was the bomb. You had the rocket, the missile, and then the bomb.
Yeah, we were the same age as Kadri, I think.
No, I think it was the youngest brother. We were the same age.
Youngest brother?
Because Kadri was on that Baltimore team that won the Super Bowl in 01, I believe.
Okay. No, I guess we would have played against the bomb then. We scrimmaged. I think my ninth grade year we scrimmaged either Myers or GAR, and it was like the big thing that one of the Ishmael kids was on that team. I thought it might have been Kadri. No, okay, no, cool. And I looked at him, and there's two players that broke my rule. Rocket Ishmael was 3-0 against Michigan at his time with Notre Dame, but the whole local connection and he was exciting to watch with returning punts, and it was
amazing.
Neat to.
He never won a Heisman for as many highlight plays as he had. He was maybe the most popular player in football during his time because Notre Dame was on NBC every week back when he was there.
Not that they're not now, but that's back before we had 17,000 regional sports. And,
right. It was a big deal to have an exclusive contract between one school and a major network. Now. What's that?
You can watch Rice versus Tulsa now if you really want to.
Oh, I every year I look forward to the Rice Tulsa game.
I have that on my DVR. It's what I'm going to do after the show.
Yeah, I have an old school DVD, Best of Rice Tulsa. So
I got mine with my Sports Illustrated subscription.
I got mine at the Salvation Army. It was a 2-for-1 with the Best of Baylor U of Houston.
Baylor Houston be a better tape. Let's be honest. So my number two will be he's still a football player, but it's based. I can say it's more of what he's done offside the football field as a broadcaster. I love Mike Golick enough that I drafted him last week as someone I'd like to work with. I get to draft Mike Golick as one of my favorite athletes from Notre Dame this week.
Mike
Golicks.
Golick also made my list both as a broadcaster and as an Eagle. And yeah,
I didn't consider him as an Eagle. Yeah. Oh, geez. I tried to shy away from Eagles. I didn't take Keith Byers for that reason.
And we talked a little about Golick last week. I think more because I don't really have strong memories of him as a Notre Dame player, but more as a broadcaster talking about
early 80s. I really wasn't paying attention to football period back then. So yeah.
But yeah, Golick was on my list, but I didn't think I would be getting him. I'm also. It's funny that we're almost exclusively. Well, no, you took Raymond. I was going to say almost exclusively Notre Dame because I was going to stay in the region and take Ron Powlus.
Ronnie Powlus.
Because then as a reporter, I got to talk to Ron a couple times. I got to like Ron.
He ran a quarterback camp.
Yeah, him and George Curry did.
Yeah, I met him once. And my only memory of Ron Powlus outside of Notre Dame when he played at Berwick, we're in training camp our junior year, and Coach Matz puts on this tape. I guess Berwick had this championship highlight tape, and they're just killing people by 30, 40 points. And then they played Hazleton, and Jimmy Drumheller's cover 2 defense just stymied Ron Powlus and the Berwick Dogs. And Ron Powlus ran a bootleg to the right where there was a clip on the Hazleton defensive end that wasn't called, and Matz just flew off the handle. Watching the highlights, he stopped it and he starts cursing and screaming, "Those bleepity bleeps, we had them beat at their house. You can't let the refs beat you." Ron Powlus had a tremendous high school career, which, I mean,
Gatorade Player of the Year in '92.
Bino Cook thought he was going to win 3 Heismans.
Yeah, and we were talking about what ifs earlier. Powlus gets to Notre Dame, breaks his collarbone. He broke his collarbone a couple times. He was saddled with the expectations from when he went out and threw the multiple touchdowns against Northwestern. And Bino Cook talked about he was going to win 2 or 3 Heismans. But Ron Powlus.
Notre Dame was still a running. They were an option attack back then. What if Ron Powlus would have gone to
Miami,
like a pro style offense? Like I was thinking BYU,
Florida State,
Cal, yeah. But
could you imagine if he took over for Charlie Ward instead of whoever, Chris Wenke, Danny Cannell?
He was something else. No, it's a good 2 local picks. Awesome, good for you, man. Geez, so there's a lot of good stuff out here, and I'm gonna go. Guy didn't have a great record against Michigan. He was 1-2-1, and as far as running backs go, he's somebody that I could respect as one of the hardest runners out there. I've seen videos of this guy versus Ray Lewis that just get me so pumped. I'm going to take Eddie George.
I like Eddie.
If you haven't seen the Eddie George Ray Lewis document, do yourself a favor, go watch that, because I get goosebumps thinking about it. Those two were warriors, and Eddie George on my list. I can respect what he was as a player.
Yeah. Eddie George is one of those guys I don't even begrudgingly like, despite his choice of college, just because what he did with Tennessee. And, I think he's one of those guys who gets forgotten a little bit, because he played around the time of Marshall Faulk, LaDainian Tomlinson, guys who were maybe a little flashier. Eddie George is more of a 4.1 yards.
No flash there.
Yeah, he was meat and potatoes. He was running through the hole, and he wasn't going to juke you. He was going to put his head down, and he was going to run through you. But he was good at it.
He did that to a lot of guys except for Ray Lewis.
Yeah. Eddie George did make my list, but I didn't put him too high. I'm going non-football for my 3rd pick.
I can't wait to hear this.
He's someone who gets mentioned from time to time, especially when Gus Johnson is calling games. And look, I really dislike Ohio State, but I will take an Ohio State grad when he's sticking it to some Nazis. I'm taking Jesse Owens.
Jesse Owens, there you go. Nice. And I don't even think of him as an Ohio State grad.
Yeah, great sprinter at Ohio State, and then obviously the 36 Olympics in Berlin.
I wonder if I would have looked up famous Ohio State graduates, where he would have ranked, or he would have had to pop up on the list. I love the whole sticking it to Germany in 1930s. And
Gus Johnson does bring up Jesse Owens a lot. when he's calling Ohio State. Is your house falling apart? It's not Jesse Owens, is it?
Did you hear that?
Is it the ghost of Jesse Owens?
No, I mean, no, it's my daughter who's definitely playing in the kitchen,
Okay.
dropping something. Like I'm in the basement of the home studio here, and yeah, wow, whew, is that the ghost of Jesse Owens?
He's running your halls.
That's I was gonna say, like, I don't know or follow a lot of track and field, so I don't know if that would have made my list maybe as much as maybe like an Ohio State graduate who played baseball or who was a stand-up comic or who owned the New York Yankees or something like that. I don't know. For my number 4, I'm torn. Like I have a massive list here of football players who I would accept, and I'll tell you what, I feel weird drafting another Ohio State Buckeye, but I read an article that that talked about this guy and just how amazing he was. Despite that, he was 1-2 against Michigan. Number 4, I'm going to take Orlando Pace. And when they talked about Orlando Pace in practice, John Cooper used to say, if they were ever doing anything wrong during practice, he wouldn't say take a lap around the field. He would say take a lap around Orlando. He was that big, and I think that was his freshman year. Here's a guy who, if you ever saw highlights of him in college, I'm not sure he was ever beat. He was such a good offensive lineman, and as a former running back, I can appreciate what a lineman does. So I'll take Pace.
He's one of the first offensive linemen I can remember there were serious conversations about in my lifetime about, do we give the Heisman to an offensive lineman? Because he was that good in 96. He was so good that there was no doubt about who the number 1 pick in that draft was going to be.
And this was, I don't know, I have to go back and look at all the number 1 picks. I know Jake Long was a number 1 pick. How many offensive tackles went number 1 in the last 40 years? I know Pace and Long. The Kansas City took a guy. The Kansas City Chiefs drafted a tackle number 1. I can't think of his name.
I mean, Tony Baselli was not number 1, but he was like top 3. Same with
Joe
Willie
Thomas
Rowe.
was number 3. The guy who went to Baltimore.
Jonathan Ogden.
Jonathan Ogden was a top pick, but I mean, number 1 overall. And like you said, he was like a Peyton Manning slam dunk. There's no chance this guy's not going to get it done in the league. And
I don't think there's any surprise that he's taken number 1 in the 97 draft and they win a Super Bowl 3-4 years later. They draft him, they bring in Marshall Faulk, and then
we build the team from the inside, and there you go. So I got myself. I have an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, and 2 running backs. I'm building this like I built my football team.
So I'm going to go back to taking another Notre Dame guy. Not from the world of sports, though. I'm going to take George Wendt, Norm from Cheers.
George Wendt he was a Notre Dame guy.
He was a Notre Dame guy.
That's just me not knowing. Like, dude, that's awesome.
Obviously, he was Norm Peterson. We both professed our love for the TV show Cheers.
He was one of the super fans.
Yeah, he's one of Bill Swirsky super fans.
I could have drafted Norm Peterson. I could have drafted 2 people twice, Golick and a super fan. Oh, man.
And the uncle to Saturday Night Live cast member Jason Sudeikis.
What do you think George Wendt did in college? What did he major in? Theater?
I'm going to say theater. Yeah, I'm going to say theater. I'm going to say he played like rugby maybe, or like intramural, like flag football. And I would be willing to bet that he drank a decent amount.
George Wendt played Roland Shears, was expelled from the University of Notre Dame during his junior year. He later graduated from Rockhurst College with a degree in economics.
So because we said graduates, does George Wendt not count? Do I have to take another name off my list?
Didn't have a story of ending. He was expelled. He had a 0.0 GPA.
Oh, so he was definitely drinking.
that he was Blutarski at Notre Dame. Let's use the suits adding him like he was from Notre Dame. Like he went. I would give you that because why not?
All right. Then, yeah, give me George Wendt.
I don't think some of my guys might not have graduated. I mean, they left school early. Who knows if they went back and got their degrees? So
yeah, we don't know if Pace went back to get his degree.
Oh my goodness, but George Wendt majoring in economics of all things is the most ridiculous thing I've heard today.
Well, it's supply and demand. He's thirsty for a beer. He buys a beer. Economics. He never pays his tab.
No, yes, I love that. And that's actually going to be interesting later on, believe it or not. Yeah, little tease for you later on down the line. So,
Okay.
So my number 5, I feel compelled to at least go to Notre Dame. So I'm going to erase all of the Ohio guys I have, and I have a choice of 2 guys from Notre Dame left. My Notre Dame list was not as extensive. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to stick with. It's just strange because I did not like this guy as a pro until I liked him as a pro, and that's such a strange way of putting it. I'm going to take Jerome Bettis, who was 1-1-1 against Michigan in his career at Notre Dame, but he went to the Rams. Nobody knew him as the Rams. He was with the Steelers about the same time I was at IUP. And Steeler fan out Western Pennsylvania was just like the annoying factor that they're trying to tell me that Cordell Stewart is a better quarterback than Peyton Manning was just like, are you kidding me? That level of fanaticism, it bugged me. Plus Cordell Stewart and the whole Colorado Hail Mary thing. But Jerome Bettis, watching him, Jerome Bettis made my list. I made a list of players who play for a Pennsylvania team that I don't hate. Like generally speaking, like you know me and PA teams, I'm not a fan of. I'm a fan of 2 of them, and Bettis made the list of players I like because he was so big. He was so hard to tackle. If there's a first and goal at the 1, and I don't have Marshawn Lynch, I want to give it to him.
Yeah, Bettis was also on my list. I think of that game they played in the snow against the Bears late in his career. It might have been his final year. Where he went over 100. I think about like the storybook ending to his career, going back to Detroit to win a Super Bowl. Just seems like a good dude.
And he was always smiling, and that's back when that time I was really still in the mold of like, if you play football and you're a Bettis type guy, you need to be mean and angry and just you can't smile. What are you doing? I want you to go hurt that other guy. And he was like, I'm a score, and you're not going to do anything. And if we win, cool. If we lose, I'm still going to go to Permanis and get a hoagie. It'll be fine.
Yeah,
it had to grow on me as I got older. I matured into appreciating what the bus was.
I liked him even from his time with the Rams. I just, he was just that kind of style of running was very fun to watch. He was the anti-Barry Sanders.
Yes. Oh, he wouldn't go around you.
Yeah.
I don't think he could go around you even if he wanted to. He was too big.
So I'll tell you, I have 3 guys on my list who didn't make the cut. Bobby Taylor, Notre Dame grad, who went on to a really nice career with the Eagles. I loved Bobby Taylor. Chris Carter, who had his time in Philly and kind of had his life saved by Buddy Ryan a little bit.
Yeah. His time in Minnesota got him off my list.
Yeah. And then former Ohio State baseball player Carl Yastrzemski.
Oh, wow. He didn't make your list. Oh, boy.
I think because the association isn't that strong. Like, you're kind of like, oh, Carl Yastrzemski? Huh. No, I'm going to include the fictional pick for my number 5. But it was a big part of his character For anyone who watched The West Wing, President Jeb Bartlett was a graduate
Oh gosh,
of
yes.
Notre Dame. He would lord it over his staff. He would make them wear Notre Dame gear. And just as a fan of West Wing and a fan of Martin Sheen in that role, I'm taking Jeb Bartlett.
That show was tremendous, and the Notre Dame-ness of President Bartlett. I didn't even think of that. That's the steal of almost any draft we've had. Oh wow, yeah, and was it who was his assistant that
Charlie.
Charlie? Yeah, did he make him wear a shirt? And Charlie's like, why am I wearing this? Or,
I know there's an episode where they're flying on Air Force One, like with like all the White House media, and he makes CJ like wear a Notre Dame hat, and then he makes her sing like the fight song to the
Ben?
reporter. He's just torturing her with Notre Dame stuff.
that's great. Oh man. So anybody did you have anybody else make your list? Like, as I thought we were doing football, I just listed a bunch of guys that I would feel okay with because I figured, well, we're gonna have some overlap.
I did. I have Montana sort of listed because I do like Joe Montana. I had Pace listed. I had considered Eddie George. Trying to think of anyone else really. Oh, you know who's a Notre Dame guy who I liked as a two-sport guy was Jeff Samardzija, who went on to play for the Cubs.
He was a baseball player. Yeah, I didn't like him. And then now that you bring his name up, I like him less. I don't know why.
And like I said, I tried to pick the
player.
worst. I tried to pick the worst of each school. So there was a tie for Notre Dame. Either Nicholas Sparks, author of The Notebook and P.S. I Love You. But more likely, I think the worst of Notre Dame is Bill Laimbeer, former Fighting Irish center Bill Laimbeer.
That's not a shock.
Bill Laimbeer has some competition, though, for worst graduate of either of the two schools because Ohio State did graduate Mr. Jeffrey Dahmer. So it's between Dahmer and Laimbeer for who's worse. Cannibal or,
the guy that got convicted of how many murders?
Right, the guy who was throwing elbows at Bird and got his, got laid out by Parrish. Yeah. One of them's worse. Well, it's not for me to decide. We'll let the internet vote on that.
I had a number of guys that they played with the Bears, so like they were okay. Guys like Mike Doss and Sean Gale, who were Ohio State players that had 500 records against Michigan. Sean Springs was a guy who played defensive back for Ohio State that I didn't like at the time because he was really good, but he's actually now he's a business owner. He's doing something out in the world. I forget what it was, but when I looked him up today, I'm like, oh wow, he's actually doing something with himself. That's cool. Chris Spielman was a hard hitting guy that turned into a what's that?
Spielman crossed my mind.
Turned into a broadcaster then as well. It was another guy who I didn't hate on the mic. The other guy that was undefeated against Michigan, I liked the highlights. He never stopped. Vernon Golston was a guy who was hard to play against.
I'll tell you another Notre Dame guy who, and he's from Rockets era, who almost made my list was Tony Rice. If you remember their quarterback in the late 80s, who probably stole some Heisman votes from Ismail.
The only other Notre Dame guy I had was Demetrius DeBose, who was a really good linebacker that, if I needed him on the list, I had him. Andy Katzenmoyer. There's a name for you. Like, you're growing up with the name Katzenmoyer in Ohio. I think he got a scholarship to Ohio State when he was in second grade. And then one name that I didn't know this guy went to Ohio State, Tom Tupa of Tecmo Super Bowl fame. Whenever the Phoenix quarterback would get hurt, Tom Tupa would be a guy you'd want in there. So there's our list.
Was Neil Lomax the quarterback who would get hurt to make way for Tom Tupa's path to glory?
I think we would just sub him in if we wanted to. No, I don't know. So there's our list. I mean, that was a lot of good players to pick from. I'd be interested to see if there's an Ohio State fan who their top 5 Michigan players would be. and why? That would be an interesting exercise. I know some Ohio State fans. I can reach out to them as well and see if they're willing to share with us. But it's a good draft.
Yeah.
Top 5 time. Top 5 after our draft. We look at the world of looking at things where we can go overlap. And I saw a picture. I don't know when I sent it to you, like Tuesday or Wednesday, because I saw it online. I'm like, wow, this is interesting. These are the coaching openings in the NFL. And I thought to myself, like, where would you want to go? If you had the choice of any of these, there were 6 openings that were on the picture. The Raiders, Saints, Jaguars, Cowboys, Bears, and Jets. Where would you rank the best places to coach next year in the NFL? And Tim, I'll defer to you to go with number 5 if you have them ranked.
I do have them ranked.
As do I.
Number 5, I went New Orleans, just because I think Jacksonville is clearly the worst spot of the 6. New Orleans isn't much better despite how they started this season. New Orleans is like a solid C+ of a coaching opportunity. I think they have to figure out some things. Is Derek Carr their guy? What are they doing at quarterback? But there are at least some pieces in place in a division that is relatively up for grabs.
The Saints were actually they didn't make my top 5. I had a coin flip for 5, 6, and they lost, which is weird. I mean, the Raiders for me were my number 5.
Okay.
And really only because they had more cap space. The Saints, I think I saw were $90 million over the cap, which is a nightmare. The only beneficial thing that I thought about them was they play in the NFC South. And they have a quarterback in David Carr, but they have their quarterback in David Carr. He's not or Derek Carr, not David.
Right.
David Carr would be even worse. But he's spectacularly unspectacular.
He was great to start the year, and people were like, "Oh, like Derek Carr for MVP," and it's like, all right, well, the Saints are 2-0. Let's
came back to earth in a hurry.
Yeah.
But it was the salary cap that got me. If I'm going to start, if I'm going to start my coaching journey from a comfort level, I think the Raiders have a better chance of putting a team together. I just have no faith in their ownership. Zero faith. But so the 5, 6 was a coin flip for me.
See, and it's funny because Jacksonville was a clear 6 for me because I have the Raiders 4. I feel like you mentioned cap space. I think Brady being part of the ownership is a plus.
That.
And
so you have them at 4.
I do, and I just think the historic lore of in free agency being able to sell people on playing for the Raiders. It's an easier sell than bringing them to the Jaguars.
It's Las Vegas, though. They're not the L.A. Raiders. They're not the Oakland Raiders. I think being in Vegas, it takes the lore away of it, for me at least.
I think the lore of bringing players to Vegas is also an asset.
I think that could be dangerous.
It could absolutely be dangerous, but
so our 4, 5, and 6 are, I think, our top 3 make a lot of sense. I went Jacksonville 4, based on what I think they can do in the future. They have their quarterback, even though I don't think Lawrence is spectacular. I'm not really enamored with him, but he is a former top pick. They've got the 5th pick in the draft this year, which I think is going to turn into one of the Michigan guys, either Graham or Johnson, which I think they can build a defense around. And I'm looking at the divisions they're in. They're in a relatively benign division. Houston won that division in a down year, and I think they're capable of maybe not the playoffs next year, but improving. Their top pick last year, Brian Thomas, had 1,000 yards as a rookie. I think things can turn around in Jacksonville quicker than they can in Las Vegas or New Orleans. But if either one of us got offered any of those jobs, we'd take it because, hey, it's the NFL. but our top three being the same, maybe not the same order, is telling of the bottom three of these openings.
I'm not as sold on Trevor Lawrence. I think that was actually the appeal for me with New Orleans and the Raiders.
Start
is
over.
that they're not as tied to a mediocre quarterback as Jacksonville is. Jacksonville is all in time-wise and money-wise on their number one pick, and it's going to be a big financial hit to do otherwise.
I don't know who I don't know who Vegas is getting to quarterback that team.
If they can draft someone in the next 2 years or bring someone in, all of like a Kirk Cousins or
tank for Aller.
Well,
that's the
pinning your Drew Aller. That's mean. I don't. He's a very good college quarterback.
He's a fine human.
There was a reason I compared him to Christian Hackenberg.
Who's your three? I think our three is probably the same.
My three is the Jets.
Yeah, same here.
They've got pieces. They don't have a quarterback, but I also think that's a plus. If
I hope they don't have a quarterback. You got to hope they don't have a quarterback. Is Rodgers under contract for one more year?
I don't believe so.
Okay, good then.
Because that was the whole point of his post-game press conference after the season finale, when he was like, we just have to decide: do they want me back? Do I want to be back? So there's a lot of flexibility to his situation. They're better off just writing the Aaron Rodgers era, in invisible ink in the team records, and then moving on.
But absolutely, they have one of the best young linemen in the league that drafted last year from Penn State, and they have a good defense. They have good pick. Heck, I thought they were going to be in the playoffs this year. So, I'm with you. My number three was the Jets as well. It's the New York market. The tough part is you're dealing with a division with the Bills. The Dolphins are good, if not, potential like a playoff contender, and New England is going to be trending in an upward direction. I think it's a tough division to play in, but not the toughest. But it's the market for me. You're going to get paid. You will get that kind of notoriety, and Jets fans are pretty passionate too. So like, you're not going to go to a team that doesn't care about what you do. I think that's important.
And I think it's the lore of making a winner out of one of the most notoriously, unsuccessful franchises in the NFL. They have the longest run of not going to the playoffs of any team in any of the major four North American sports. They haven't won a Super Bowl since Kevin Arnold was in junior high on the Wonder Years. Can you imagine being the coach who becomes like the Bill Walsh or the Bill Belichick of the Jets, doing that in New York with that franchise?
I would
like he would become to the Jets what Parcells became to the Giants. That they would build a statue of you. Like, think how starved they are for that kind of
build a statue at the 50-yard line.
like Eric Mangini was there and he won for 1 year and they were calling him Mangenius. That's how starved they are for a good coach quarterback combination. So I think it's a very attractive position.
If you are anything like me, you're number two.
Oh, Chicago.
Oh, you're gonna go Chicago too. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Now I wrote these down for you. These are the 14 names of coaches who have either been brought in for interviews or who were rumored to have been brought in. Only one of them is no longer on the table, which is Mike Vrabel, who was hired by New England. But some of these are confirmed interviews, or some of them are interviews that are in the offing that will be coming. We have Thomas Brown, interim coach. We have Miami defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver, New York Giants offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, former Seahawks coach Pete Carroll, Arizona offensive coordinator Drew Petzing. We have Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn from Detroit, Ron Rivera of Carolina and Washington, David Shaw, Broncos executive and former Stanford coach. Mike McCarthy, recently fired from Dallas. Joe Brady from Buffalo. Brian Flores from Minnesota. Talk about casting a wide net.
I think that just shows that Chicago ownership doesn't have a they don't have a focus on what they're looking on. They don't have a vision, which is my biggest complaint with Chicago ownership. Despite the fact that Chicago would have been my number one, but for basically because they have all of the pieces in place on offense except for offensive line, which they can address in free agency and or the draft. They need a culture, and that's where like the head coach needs to come in and be a guy like a Dan Campbell who, their first year, the first press conference he gave about, if you kick us in the teeth, we're going to come back. We're going to come back harder and we're going to fight. And you talk about win starved. I mean, these guys haven't won a Super Bowl in quite some time either. Just the fact that they've been to one, they made Super Bowl 41, but they haven't been relevant since then. I like Chicago's defense enough. They need some edge guys. So if they need to build the line. I thought they were going to win 11 games this year. So I think for me, talent-wise, they're just in arguably the toughest division in football.
Inarguably.
With the we'll talk about the AFC West is pretty tough. I don't think anyone wants to coach the Raiders and go play the Chargers, the Chiefs, or the Broncos now either.
But how long are the Chiefs going to be the Chiefs?
Well, they are now, at least for the next couple of years when I'm coaching. The one thing you could say about the Saints is they keep their coaches for a while. They give them a leash. You don't have a leash in the NFL anymore. You win now, or we're going to find somebody else.
Look at the Jets.
Yeah, for me, I like Chicago and that's probably me being a fan. So, as year two, then year number one is going to be Dallas. How is Dallas stacked up for you?
They're obviously all in on Dak because they paid him. Which means
they didn't
which means they didn't pay Micah Parsons. They've got CeeDee. They've got elite talent that was injured, couldn't all stay on the field at the same time. And I think Mike McCarthy already had one foot out the door after last year's playoff collapse to Green Bay, where Jerry Jones brought him back, but with a very tepid endorsement. Like he was very much like Mike McCarthy's our coach, but he also had, 3 coordinators on the other line, I think with the right hire, Dallas is only 1 year removed from winning a very competitive NFC East and putting up, 12 wins last year. And I think that in the right system with the right talent around him, Dak can win a Super Bowl with the time he has left. So I think, like I'd said to you on text, I think there was a clear 1-2 in this hierarchy. I don't begrudge anyone who says Chicago's a better spot, but I just think right now for a team that could win big in the next 2 or 3 years, it's Dallas.
What I wrote about Dallas, same thing about talent. I wonder, because of what they did with Prescott and Lamb, how they're going to be able to keep some of that talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. The wild card for me is I don't know if I would want to work for Jerry Jones.
And
that's a tough sell, especially when you don't become a head coach because you don't have an ego. And that kind of personality clash in Dallas, in a division outside of the Giants that is really good. I mean, Washington's coming up. Philadelphia is there. That's not an easy division to play in. So I put Dallas 2 because of their talent, but I think I put Dallas 2 because of – I don't like Chicago's ownership anymore, but Jerry Jones is out there.
I think Dallas needs a coach like and it's easier said than done, but like a kind of person, like a type of mentality like Jimmy Johnson was, and like what they thought they were getting with Mike McCarthy, who was coming in and could, tap his ring on the table and be like, I've won before, sign the checks and get out of here. They need someone who's going to be an irritant to Jerry Jones and be like, you haven't won since I've been here. Let's try
I think
things.
the media wants that too.
They need someone to maybe get in Jerry Jones's face and tell him, hey, Jerry, get out of the room. The football people are talking. Sign the checks. Buy some damn curtains for the window that faces the sun. And just, get us a workable secondary. And, we'll all get our fingerprints on the Lombardi trophy together. Yeah. They need an equally strong voice in that room with Jerry Jones. And Mike McCarthy just wasn't in for whatever reason.
Is there one? Outside of Bill Belichick, who's now in Chapel Hill.
I mean, if you're talking about like other people who've won rings, I'll tell you who would have been a nice hire would have been Jim Harbaugh. Can you imagine Harbaugh and Jerry Jones? Those two egos?
Oh, yeah. For about 20 minutes. That might have been that could have been the shortest owner coaching marriage ever.
And I'll tell you because
Jim Harbaugh wears on people. He does. I mean, I like him. I like his style. But
Harbaugh has a lot of the same DNA as Jimmy Johnson. One in college, one in the pros. Big ego. It either would have worked beautifully or it would have been a mushroom cloud.
Spectacular wildfire. But I mean, that's an interesting way to look at the potential job of them, because people are going to have a lot more pressure than, the average 9-to-5 job like us. But a little pressure on you now, because we didn't have the best Mr. Smarty Pants last week, did we?
We did not.
I got a question with a list and then another list for you that's totally different.
Okay.
So the question comes from an Instagram post I saw earlier, and it was kind of like a surprising thing. It's dealing with professional football and the 8 teams that are remaining in the playoffs, but it focused on the quarterback position. You talked a little bit about Dak Prescott getting paid and how much money he's due. Currently, I believe Dak Prescott at $60 million is the highest paid average annual value quarterback.
Yeah.
So the question for you, first of all, of the quarterbacks remaining in this year's playoffs, which quarterback has the highest average annual valued contract? And could you put those quarterbacks in a list of high to low?
Okay. So Mahomes, Jackson, Allen, and Hurts all got paid fairly recently. I don't know how recently Stafford made his money. All right, Daniels is last because he's working on a rookie deal, right?
Daniels is not last.
Is Stroud?
Stroud ranks 26th overall.
So Daniel must just being a top pick, which okay. So Daniels is 7th.
They're both 2s, but I think Daniels being a year later. So Stroud is at 9. Daniels is at 9.4.
Okay.
So you're going to work your way up. I like that.
Okay. So that's. Let me write these down as I do them.
There you go.
So we've got Stroud and Daniels. Okay, who else do we have? We have Hurts, Allen.
While you do that, I'm going to enjoy some gummy bears.
Stroud, Goff, Stafford. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So Stroud and Daniels are gone. Let me go next. How about Goff?
Goff is incorrect if you're working
I
way
am
up.
working my way up. Damn. All right, then what about Stafford?
Stafford comes in at an average annual value of 40. So the jump is
9.
from Jaden Daniels at 9.4 to Matthew Stafford at 40.
Okay.
This just in, quarterbacks are expensive.
Wait, am I missing someone? I had Daniels, Goff, Stafford, Hurt, Lamar.
It sounded like you had the whole list. You should have
Oh,
5
I
left.
didn't write down Mahomes. I wrote Stafford twice. There's Mahomes. Okay. All right. So,
You have to put Mahomes
yes.
in there.
So, all right. I've got Stroud, Daniels, Stafford. I'll go Goff next.
Wrong again.
Wow. Is it? Is it Lamar next?
Nope.
Wow. Allen?
Josh Allen at an average annual value of 43. Ranks 14th in the NFL.
That's a bargain.
That's a bargain. For what is the NFL salary cap?
Dude's going to be
In
MVP this
2024
year.
is
He's making middle of the road quarterback money.
$273 million. $273 million to pay 53 players. Josh Allen is a bargain at 43. And I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, like, how amazing is that we could call 43 million a bargain?
We've got Bugattis and we've got station wagons. Not everyone's built the same. All right, I'll go Goff next.
Be wrong again.
Is it Hurts? Because Hurts is approaching 50 a year. Is it Lamar?
Nope.
So it's Mahomes?
So Patrick Mahomes, I think Patrick Mahomes took a pay cut. He restructured. His average annual value comes in tied with Kirk Cousins at 45.
Okay, because I thought Mahomes was like in the neighborhood of 60.
Might be worth 60, but he's not getting paid 60.
Okay.
Dak Prescott is.
Yeah. All right, is Goff?
Joe Burrow's at 55, and Jordan Love is at 55, and they're both, all three of them are at home watching the playoffs.
Is Goff third?
Goff is not third.
All right, Hurts is third?
Hurts is third at 51, 9th overall in the league.
Then Goff 2, Lamar 1?
51. Jared Goff is the number one highest average annual valued quarterback in this year's playoffs at 53. Lamar's at 52.
Well, look,
I figured that would throw you.
I like Jared Goff, but that is askew, sir.
Liking, and then Jared Goff had a great year, and we'll see what he does without his offensive coordinator next year. But 53 is a lot. So yeah, that's the list from 1 to 8. Goff, Jackson, Hurts, Mahomes, Allen, Stafford, Daniels, and Stroud. We'll see if we can get you on the second list a little bit different, because we're going to get out of sports. We talked about sports pretty much all day today. Second list, and it's inspired by my daughter. Just the other day, she learned Clue Junior at school. They had a board game day, and she now just wants to play Clue at home. We have the Simpsons version, but it's not the adult version, but it's tougher than the junior version. So I'm kind of holding off on it. As you may or may not know, though, Clue was a major motion picture. Have you ever seen the movie Clue?
Would you believe I've never seen the movie Clue?
In that case, this list is going to bomb spectacularly.
I mean, I'm familiar with Clue, but I never saw it.
I will readjust the list. I can do that. Watch this. Boom. List has been adjusted. Can you name the principal pieces, the characters in the board game Clue?
Like what they use to murder?
No, just the characters, like their names. I don't know the wrench and the knife and the gun. I know a handful.
Yeah.
But I have 6 of them. It's a 6-player game.
Ooh, I haven't played Clue. So Colonel Mustard.
Colonel Mustard is one. And Colonel Mustard was actually the piece that Maria played.
Okay.
With. She was Colonel Mustard.
Because the corpse is Mr. Body, I believe. Does that count?
Mr. Body, I'm going to give you credit as part of the movie. Mr. Body was played by Lee Ving.
Okay.
great character actor.
Boy, it feels like
You're doing better on this, and you didn't even see the movie.
Yeah, and I've only played the game a handful of times. Yeah.
Really? Oh,
Was
man.
there like Mrs. Peacock?
Was it Mrs. Peacock? That's my favorite character because she's blue.
I think those are the only three I remember, to be honest.
So, player colors. The white piece was Mrs. White.
Racist.
The purple piece is Professor Plum.
Oh, I remember Professor Plum.
The red piece is Miss Scarlet.
Now, say that,
And
I remember
then,
that, but I would never remembered otherwise.
Appropriately named green piece is Mr. Green.
Oh, it's kind of like Reservoir Dogs.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. But the movie, if you haven't seen the movie, this is phenomenal. It really is. The first time I remember seeing it was on like the Wolf TV movie of the weekend or something. It got to the point now where I had seen it enough times, I could watch the movie and just go script for script, line for line with people. It was great, and it's one of Tim Curry's best roles.
I do like Tim.
So I mean, do yourself a favor. It's got to be streaming somewhere. And like we've had this talk about movies before, and I've told you to go watch stuff, and I'm sure you haven't watched Wicked yet, and you're gonna be angry about that. But I mean, honestly, Clue is good. It really is. And it's got 3 endings. 3 endings.
And I'll tell you what I was in the mood to watch. With I don't know if you saw that David Lynch died this week, creator of Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet. I was really in the mood to watch the movie Mulholland Drive, which might be the best movie post 2000. It's just such a great movie. Another movie that has multiple endings. That if you ask me to describe what happens, I don't know that I could.
Yeah, I don't. Clue, I think, was an 80s movie. But, I mean, dude, seriously, good. Go get it.
This is 2 weeks in a row.
So
I really biffed Mr. Smarty Pants.
Yeah, seriously. And I don't know if I'm making it too tough or the Jared Goff thing I thought was tricky enough. Like, yeah, I'll get you. But I didn't know you didn't play Clue as much.
Yeah, I only played a handful of times. My neighbor had it when we lived in New Jersey. Once we moved to Pennsylvania, I don't know if I ever played Clue once.
So as far as game design works, the biggest problem with Clue is the whole dice rolling and moving. There are other games that feature like the murder mystery that do it better. But when you're growing up in the 80s, you play what you have. So
yeah, I remember my best friend in New Jersey, like their family just had this big closet of board games because we would play like Light Bright, Operation, Clue. If I remember right, she had a what was it, Simon, where you'd have to hit the pattern of, not a board game, but still.
Neither was Light Bright, but it's fine. I got you. I know what you're doing. So the bracket buster today, I kind of struggled. Like, what am I doing? And I came up with something, and you're going to get the connection these guys have. I mean, really relatively quickly. But the draft really it's a good tie-in here. So I'm going to give you 2 things. You just tell me whatever metric you want to use in your head. You just tell me who wins. Okay? So in round 1, game 1, we have Sam Malone versus Woody Boyd.
Sam Malone.
And game 2, we have Rebecca Howe versus Diane Chambers.
Diane Chambers.
Okay, so I mean now you know the category already. And in game 3, we have Cliff Clavin versus Norm Peterson.
Did I ever tell you about the time I met John Ratzenberger?
No.
He was insane. He gave a talk at Penn College. This would have been back in like February of 2014. Yeah. Where they would bring in people to talk about to advocate for trade careers. Like, you don't have to go to college. Like, you can make a great career as a plumber or a carpenter, which is a great thing to advocate for. But he was so anti-elite. He was like, I remember growing up in the 60s and I was a carpenter building stages at Woodstock, and I built them so that they would collapse and kill as many hippies as possible. But not one hippie died. And I was like, did Cliff Clavin just say he tried to mass murder hippies in the 60s? And that was his talk for like an hour, where he just talked about how he hated liberals and hippies and he wanted to kill them. Wow. So I'm going Norm. I'm going Norm Peterson.
That took a turn I wasn't prepared for.
I'm taking famous Notre Dame non-graduate George Wendt, Norm Peterson.
Graduated from Tufts University with a degree in economics.
Yeah, he graduated from the School of Hard Knocks.
Our final first round matchup is Carla Tortelli and Ernie Pantuso. Oh, he's the 2 seed, so that makes sense. All right, our final 4. Let's go Norm Peterson versus Ernie Pantuso, which almost feels like the Bills versus the Ravens this week.
But it's coach. It's Ernie Pantuso.
And he will make I'll tell you what, the final 4 game that we really deserve but aren't going to get, Sam Malone versus Diane Chambers.
That is a tough one, because even though people didn't necessarily like her character was amazing. But every day's a good day for May Day. Give me Sam Malone.
Sam Malone. So behind the bar, we have Mayday Malone and Coach Ernie. Who's coming out on top this week's bracket buster?
I love Coach, but I have to go Mayday. One of my favorite sitcom characters.
Yeah, it's only because he pitched for Boston.
Coach for Boston?
There.
He might have. He was a career minor leaguer.
He might have.
He could have spent some time in Pawtucket.
If Bob Uecker could make the show and Ernie Pantuso couldn't, that just tells you how good a player Bob Uecker was. Bringing it back to him.
We should have like a thing of like most famous celebrities to play minor league baseball. Because Randy Savage.
Paffa would be one.
I'd have to think. Kurt Russell played minor league baseball. The actor Kurt Russell.
Do your thumbs up thing again. Okay, I see what happened. Like, I'm getting this weird part on Restream that it's got like a bubble.
Yeah, I'm getting it too.
It's not. That's so weird. Like, I don't get the smiley emoji, but wow, that's the things I learned about this system.
What a time to be alive!
Amazing. Yeah, weird and wacky minor leaguers. That'd be something to talk about. Sure, let's get Capper on that.
Our boots on the ground.
We have been doing enough. So I got to contact Capper. I got to contact some Ohio State fans. I think our buddy Norm is still a Notre Dame fan. I wonder if he could.
He was at a Notre Dame game this year, because I saw he posted on Facebook. He took the kids.
Okay.
To the game where they ran that super creative fake punt that got called back. Was it Purdue? Who are they playing? I can't remember who they played.
I honestly barely remember our show last week. So what Notre Dame did 15 weeks ago, it's out there.
I love this dynamic where you're like, I have to get in touch with Capper. I have to do all the graphics. I have to do the rundown. And I was like, I have to get up at like 8, get a bagel, and then just make sure my phone's plugged in. Like I'm the diva of soup and meatballs.
Well, I'd say I have to do all this just to keep up with you. And I try to have something for the kids to look at least they know what we're talking about sometimes. Because with you and me, we go from Bob Uecker to Hulk Hogan to, Richard Nixon, and if I don't have the graphic to look back on, like, what were we talking about?
Also,
you just go on an endless spiral of what are they doing here? We
didn't even touch on Bob Uecker's contributions to 80s professional wrestling when he would show up at WrestleManias.
You're right.
His interview of Andre the Giant.
One of the pictures I have it saved in my Soup and Meatballs folder that I was going to use was him next to Andre, and I was going to say they must have put him on a stack of phone books, because Andre at 7'4", how big was Uecker? I'm looking this up now. Let's get our.
So Andre's height was apparently exaggerated.
It was overstated, but I think it had to be at least 7'1", 7'2".
I'd heard he's kind of like the same way they said Alonzo Mourning was a 7-footer when he was really like a generous 6'9", 6'10".
I heard listed at 6'1", so maybe he wasn't sitting on it.
I heard Andre was like 6'10", 6'11".
Okay, then and he towered over Euchre, but really the size of his hands because he did the.
Yeah, he does the double hand choke on Euchre's
Don't worry about Vanna White. You got me. Yeah, Bob Euchre. Is he in the WWE Hall of Fame? If not, he should be.
I don't believe he is.
He should be in every Hall of Fame. Gosh, the memorial
Let's put him
videos
in the
I've
Meatballs
seen.
Hall of Fame.
Yeah, let's. You know what?
Inaugural member.
We have to come up with a class. Well, I like that idea. I like it, and we have to, like the slowest time in sports.
Which is usually the Monday right before the Major League All-Star game.
I was thinking June.
So
because like whenever the NBA finals are over, and you don't have training camp yet. Yeah, we have some time. We'll have nominations, and we'll have to give out people votes. And if Capper gets back to us, I'll give Capper a vote. Like our votes count for 10, Capper's count for 1. But,
in sports journalism, that's typically like they save up stories that are known as being evergreen, like they can run anytime. There's no timeliness to them. To save up for like when Major League Baseball goes on the All-Star break, because at least you have the home run derby on the Monday before the game, and then you have the All-Star game on Tuesday. But until baseball comes back, and you have those like couple days where there's nothing going on, there's no NBA, no NHL, maybe. Like you're talking about like the NBA draft or like upcoming NFL camps.
When I was doing TV, that was after like Little League kind of ends the first week of July.
Yeah, maybe you have like a high school
preview stuff wasn't starting for a month. Yeah, those were lean days. I remember.
Yeah, you might have like Legion baseball or like high school football all-star games like District 4, Big 33, something like that. But
certainly not a week's worth of news, but yeah, I like that. I like that idea. The Super Meatballs Hall of Fame, and he'll be 100% unanimous. Get him in.
And it's just understood that both Soup and Meatballs are just included in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, sure. We'll put them on the ballot, but
And then we'll have to come up, maybe not a jacket, but like a T-shirt for all inductees.
No. I want something like ridiculous, like a bandana or like a phony mustache with, like a jacket is too formal, and we don't have the money to give people rings.
I don't know if I ever told you this story, but I can remember distinctly what your dad wore to my wedding, because he had like this array of like sport coats that he's.
I remember one thing about your wedding, and after that, I don't remember anything. Thank you, Tommy Dwyer. Rest in peace.
Your dad wore this canary yellow blazer to my wedding, because I remember standing up at the altar, and one of the groomsmen, I won't say who, leaned over and said, "Hey, when did Mr. Gemelli get inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame?"
So the Holy Rosary had this. It's like a yearbook, but not a yearbook. Like they took pictures of parishioners, and like we had to go up, and we had to suit up, and like it was a whole thing. I was looking through my dad's closet, and I found that exact yellow coat. I have a picture of myself in it. If I find it, I'll send it to you. But he had yellow, green. There's a picture of me growing up when I grew up on Beach Street of my sister and I outside the house on an Easter. I'm wearing the Tony Montana starter outfit. The shorts, or my dad is wearing this pink plaid whatever. And like, I love him more than my luggage, but holy cow, does my dad's wardrobe leave a lot to be. Oof. And he thought he was styling back in the. He might have been styling back in the 70s.
I was going to say, devil's advocate. Bob might have been the coolest cat on the block.
Could have been. But see, I was just talking about. I was texting this. I have a buddy from college who's a big wrestling guy, who he put a picture up on the Book of Face about Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels. Like there was one of those promo pictures. And it was like, this is like peak 90s or something, because they were all in like neon and their stuff was cut off. And I told him, I said, did you even grow up in the 90s if you didn't have like a shirt that had the sleeves cut in the back? And he was like, I hated the Rockers. I'm like, well, so did I. I like Demolition, but I can't rock around the gear they were wearing. I did have the Jason Voorhees mask that I spray painted black with the black bandana, but like you can't walk around like that all the time. You can walk around with your sleeves cut and you look kind of cool.
I
don't wear that now. I've evolved to like the normal hoodie and sweatpants, and
we wear caps and sleeves at this level, son.
I love it. Yeah. Bob's wardrobe was.
I give it a
thumb.
There we go.
I have to mouse over your thumb. I can't mouse over my thumb though. It doesn't work. It's so weird.
Well, I give your inability to give thumbs up or thumbs down a.
There it is.
Sad face.
That's great. So, dude, 240 in. Good show again. We'll reach out to those people. We'll get Capper on the horn next week. We'll see what he says about Pete Alonso and the Mets and where they go from here. But until then, there's Iron Man Drinking Tim. I'm Max, wishing you a happy week, a happy MLK Day, and stay warmer than we are. -10 on Tuesday.